work ethic, not based on sex.
I'm not saying affirmative
not based
action.
on their sexual
Are
orientation.
you allowed to fire them if you find out they're trans?
If you need to, if you need to, then you should. If you need to, then you should.
What? Okay, well, I'm glad you admit it. The answer is no. I just want to have discussions, debates, talk about the marketplace of ideas. The best ideas rise to the top. You know, the old song and dance. Even though oftentimes the way that they frame things and the way that they platform people does so in which they're obviously going to be benefiting right-wing narratives in a totality. They're a really, really shitty, I would say, company that is consistently trying to be like, we just care about the discourse more than anything. The discourse is the most important thing, even if the discourse and the way we frame it may benefit the right. And I also don't agree with the entire idea where, like, you know, people in vulnerable communities, say like homosexuals, that they should have to justify their existence to straight men. If straight people are oppressing gays, then it's straight people who have to sort their shit out and just really stop being so insecure, honestly. And so there shouldn't be a 5 gay guys explain to one straight dude why they are not sinful, evil, and also why they don't want to fuck him. And then that's the whole Jubilee video, right? And you're just sitting there and it's like, so obviously all of you like are living in sin and do it up the butt, and like that's why you're all evil. And then they're like, actually, we're not evil, and well, yeah, but all of you want to have sex with me. And it's like, no, actually, we're not into homophobes or straight guys, and like, what am I watching? Kind of shit, right? Like, why does this content exist? And you know, there's a couple exceptions. There's been some really good performances, obviously done by people who push up against a lot of weird and extreme rhetoric. And I've said for a while, not being a debate pervert myself, I'm not a huge debator, but I'll always defend my positions, especially if I'm invited onto bigger shows or platforms. And still trying to get on that PBD podcast sometime soon. And one day I'll go on Theo Von, and I'll be able to explain a handful of things, I hope, to Mr. Von. But Daddy Sam is really good at it. He's because for one thing, he has patience. I don't. There's a certain point where someone just standing in front of you being like, the white people are getting erased. You're trying to erase the white race, and that's why we're the most oppressed minority, all this kind of shit, where it's just like, none of that is true. And it's just so frustrating because, like, you have the same access to information that all of us do. I shouldn't have to hold someone's hand and sit there and be like, that's just not factually correct, though. And at the end of the day, like the very concept of what is a white person doesn't even exist. Like, there's no such thing as races. Like, we're not actually a whole bunch of different animals. We're all the same animal. We just have different traits that we classify into different groups and treat people differently for, again, things like how much melanin they have. It's all ridiculous. We should probably talk about that. But like, yeah, Sam does have the ability to be patient, and then just long enough to be able to be like, oh, so you don't know what that means, which again, going to be transforming this material in real time. I'm not going to be utilizing it for its original intent, because I believe its original intent is shit. So I'm going to criticize it. And so for the purposes of criticism, because I think it's poo-poo caca, I'm going to be transforming it into something brand new that doesn't infringe upon the original copyright and the copyright intent of the original producers and the copyright holders therein. This is called fair dealing in the country that I reside in, Canada, and in the United States it's known as fair use. Bam.
I mean, look, I got to be honest with you. Like, you and I have a fundamental disagreement. We will never see eye to eye on this. Hi, I'm Sam Seder, host of the Majority Report, and today I am surrounded by 20 conservatives.
See if we can also block.
My first claim is Trump's attack on DEI hides his real goal, which is to give corporations more power.
We use these flags to block the copyright. Let's see if this works.
Sorry, Sam.
No worries.
All right. I think I have a slight issue with the back end of the premise. I guess Trump's attacks on DEI being a real goal to, give corporations more power. I'd rather center the conversation around the democratic, especially as conservatives, the issues that people have with DEI and why I believe Trump would, want to support the issues that people are voting for him for.
I mean, I'm talking about his whole
Right.
attack on DEI. It's actually DEIA, right? You know that,
Right.
in government agencies. The A being for accessibility.
Right. Yeah, and I think the attack on DEI isn't an attack on people's protections. It's on the other end of the spectrum, right? Wanting to end DEI doesn't want to end protections for someone being disabled, someone being, inaccessible to get into a job. It rather wants to de-incentivize corporations to push them to hire these people on unfair bases, right?
Okay, but DEIA
Right.
is not about quotas or anything like that. It is about protections for people within these organizations, or to make sure that you have different communities that
Right.
have the opportunity to apply to these things.
Right.
So it can mean, within government agencies, it means things like, let's pay interns so that not only wealthy people can have their kids do internships in these agencies.
Right. And
or let's put out notices around different parts of town,
Sure.
metaphorically speaking, so that people know this job exists.
Right, this is where it begins, but this isn't the ultimate goal that conservatives have an issue with. Conservatives don't have an issue with trying to spread job applications to poorer communities.
Well,
so
then
everyone
why
gets-
rescind
the
DEIA
prob-
requirements
the
in
problem
government
with-
agencies?
'cause the
I can already tell, what this is going to be so much and just like going in the circle is that y'all have been led to believe something that doesn't exist in reality, and then all of you get mad about it. It's like the exact thing. I've talked about this, so many different, even today I was going on a long rant about this, that like things that don't necessarily concern you are of such chief concern to so many far right people, and then people who get indoctrinated into believing consistently that like this is the thing that is really bad, like the trans people in sports is going to affect your life in ways you can't imagine. You better spend time, money, effort, canvassing. You better donate to political parties that are willing to fight for this. You got to get really mad about this. CRT is being taught in your schools, and it's being taught to children, and it's being taught to all the kids that it's making kids hate white children. It's teaching them that all white people are evil, and white people are racist, and they're just racist babies, and that's why CRT is dangerous, and they're teaching it in your schools. That's after they get done with the gay agenda. They're going to teach the kids how to be gay and turn them into gay because of the gay, super gay. And then it's like, if you're sitting across from someone like Sam Seder, who obviously he has a lot of conversations with Republicans, he's got a call-in show, he's no stranger to any of this. He's obviously going to have to sit there and be like, so that's just not factually true. That's not what this means. That's not what this. No, DEI doesn't literally mean die, white man, die. That's not what it stands for. And that's not what the programs are for either.
problem with DEIA is there may not be like perceived actual number quotas, but that's what it devolves into, and especially with corporations.
Do you have the evidence of that?
I mean, sure, we can look at corporations that are government agencies that are hiring people on not true proper bases. We can even look
Well,
at.
I mean,
we can even look at.
Would you
the
have
DNC's,
any evidence that that's happening?
Yeah, even the DNC's nomination of Kamala as president this year. There was no reason to nominate Kamala as she wasn't democratically selected. She wasn't. She didn't go.
She was the vice president. Could be a bit of an indicator as to why someone might do that.
For a single primary,
Well,
none
wait
of
a
these
second.
things.
So you're saying that Kamala was the vice president of the United States after
Yes.
the president drops out 2 months before the convention. You think that's a DEI
She wasn't
hire?
Every presidential nominee is democratically selected to be the nominee for that
Do
party,
you realize
except
there were
for
not
Kamala
even
Harris.
primaries prior to 1972
Well,
in
sure,
the
but
Democratic Party?
this isn't before
Well, I
1972.
understand.
I already love this. You can tell he's leveling up. He's going Super Saiyan Sam at that point. Wait a minute. If you care so much about this, did you know that there wasn't even primaries prior to 1970? Sure, fine, I'll acknowledge that. But at the end of the day, this is not 1972. No, it's not. But then why are you complaining about this as a very recent phenomenon?
But what did
This is,
you think
know-
you were going to run primaries in those 2 months?
Well,
I mean,
sure,
Joe Biden should have dropped
but
out
even
3 years
even
ago, as far as I'm
before,
concerned.
well, sure, but even before, when Kamala was running in primaries, she didn't. She
Okay.
wasn't the next man up. None of this. She wasn't the next person.
She
up.
was the vice president.
right? Of course, but
Yeah.
she wasn't
That
in
tiny
primaries.
detail. But
Right,
listen,
well,
aside from, I would have might have wanted a different candidate as well. But that has nothing to do with Trump rescinding orders that basically say you need to search for a wide range of candidates, not necessarily give any different benefits, but you need to make sure different communities have access to the awareness of this job. You need in your office accessibility for people who have physical handicaps.
Sure.
If you have folks who identify as as trans, you need to make it at least hospitable and not. This is all non-discriminatory stuff. That's what this is all
But you're
about.
cherry picking the portions of DEI that even conservatives don't have issues. Conservatives don't have
That's
issues with
what
making workplaces.
the whole DEI
Yes.
apparatus within
It
our
is-
government
okay.
was a
Yeah, only 5 minutes in, and I can already tell this entire thing is going to be nonstop. You are angry and believe something that the pundit class of the right has convinced you, and it's just not true. It's just not based in reality. And I mean, it sucks because it's just like this really shows, if nothing else, how effective they are at brainwashing on a very large scale. Not only their base, but even people who might not genuinely be thinking about this kind of stuff in their 9 to 5. Distract you from the actual people who exploit you. It's called spreading false consciousness. And holy shit, have they ever gotten really good at doing it. Dude, are you mad at your employer? Are you mad at your work? Are you mad at the employer of your parents? Are you mad at the fact that your dad can't see you a lot because he gets treated like shit at work, or has to do a secondary job, or has to work on the app economy? Or are you mad at the way that your mom was treated, or the fact that your mom was abused at work or something like that? No, let's get mad at DEI. Let's get mad at all these different acronyms that you know are the bad things. CRT, DEI. WOKE, the mother of them all.
Function of doing exactly what I said had nothing to do with quotas.
It is unfortunate that those things get taken out, and there might not have been specific
What
numerical
else was he trying to take out?
It's trying to take out people getting jobs that don't deserve those jobs. People getting pushed into positions they have no qualification.
There is no evidence of what you just said happening in these government agencies.
That's not true at all. I mean, we're not allowed to sit here and have notes and numbers to pull up for you. You can't.
Give me one example.
You can't ask me to pull up numbers when I'm not able to sit here and look on a computer for you. But these are the problems that conservatives.
Sorry, you've been voted out. Please return to your seat.
Thanks, ma'am.
See ya.
Okay, so I think the roots issue with DEI isn't what the previous gentleman was trying to point. Conservatives aren't necessarily have issues with those things like accessibility to people who might need help. The issue is, and I kind of referred to this before, when you have agencies and systems, what tends to happen when you have government overreach, big government, is that agencies and systems get abused. And I think unequivocally, DEI was heavily abused in practice. It was great in theory. It's idealistic, which is sure is fine, that a lot of people can get behind, but it was abused in a lot of ways. When you have actors, like we're in California right now, when you have actors, white male actors who are being told, we do not want white men, we're not gonna cast any white men, we only want this particular kind of gender, race, right? That is an abuse of a system. It's no longer fair, but
I mean, I'm thinking the same thing. I was like, wait, what? What role were they applying for? I'm curious. Just like, I mean, is there context to that? Like, what role were you trying out for? I mean, if the movie was like, we're holding auditions for MLK Jr., fair dues. Gotta be honest. I don't really think that that's something that like a lot of white people should be even contemplating applying for. But I don't think that's a huge thing. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the world has changed so rapidly around me. You know, I'm not going to auditions trying to get film roles or anything like that. But I have seen a lot of interviews with, you know, a lot of people of color who have talked about working in the film industry. And a very common complaint that I see a lot of people say is that they are constantly, and they're tired of this, being brought in for roles specific to their race or ethnicity. As in, like, you know, there are actors who are Asian who are like, I'm constantly auditioning for roles to play a Chinese character or a Chinese cartoon character. Or there are black people who are like, I'm constantly being brought in to play roles of black characters or black cartoon characters or black video game characters. But like, I'd like to just play characters, right? But it seems to be that there's like a default setting, and that kind of sucks. And that, like, you know, even though it is good that we're having more representation, and they're starting to, you know, recognize that it's probably bad if a person who isn't from India is playing an Indian character, like say Apu, that these are small little changes that aren't, you know, indicative of a bigger thing. But hey, I could be wrong. I didn't know that for white people in the acting game, that right now it's really hard, because if you're an actor and you show up, they're like, oh, sorry, we're not looking for your kind. You know what I mean? Your type.
More about just perpetuating one aspect of, you know, visual compelling aspects, because at the end of the day, what's going to happen is companies are going to say, well, we want to look the most diverse.
Okay, well,
and what that is it's moral grandstanding. It's that because we have more black women, we sell better soda. Like that.
I got you.
That is not.
Well, that's getting a little far afield from what Trump's DEI orders are. But I can tell you, as somebody who was a sitcom actor in the 90s, I would walk into a room and everybody I would see would look like me. And I was doing a second position, which doesn't even exist anymore, where you do 2 pilots a year. And I was looking around basically every part of television when I was a kid. I was centered in some fashion. It was either this is about my mother, or this is about my father, or someone like me was centered. So, we can argue as to whether or not Hollywood is overcorrected in some fashion. But on a governmental level, the DEIA directives that agencies were following for the past 4 years is nothing. I don't know what you mean by abuse on it, but there is no evidence that it was an affirmative action program in those instances. It was about anti-discrimination. You cannot discriminate against these people, and you want to open up opportunities for a broad swath of people. Again, the internship is like one of the most material things that exist there, where the idea that you need to pay interns. And that's important because you want low-income people to have the same sort of like opportunities to see these things as wealthy people. My kids can maybe afford to do an internship for the summer instead of going to get a job.
I think what's happening is we're talking about 2 different things.
Well, but I'm talking about Trump's DEIA rescission is a way of basically driving people out of these agencies, making it
you're saying Trump specifically, and I understand why you're saying Trump, but I think the American people as a whole have kind of, and I won't say whole because obviously it's not 100%, but a majority of the American people have kind of rejected DEI because, again,
I don't think a majority of Americans know what DEIA is.
Yes, I totally agree with that. I think that is something that a lot of people have had to play catch up on. And obviously it sucks because a lot of people who do now want to talk about that kind of thing are getting their entire version of it clouded, where it's just like, oh, I've heard the DEI is actually kind of, it's called inverse racism, and it makes things worse for white people, and it doesn't allow them to get jobs because they have to hire non-white people in their place. Or I've heard that it's about teaching, employees of a place to feel guilty for being white or things like that in their job. And I don't do they not realize that you can have a really hard life if you're white? That has nothing to do with it. So I don't understand the point of that either.
That may be the case, but again, my point is we're talking about abuse of a system. What you're talking about is not necessarily what was happening. What people were seeing were, hey, because you're white, you can't do this. And liberals like to do this thing where they create systems, and then they created the whole idea of woke, and then they backed away, and then conservatives say woke, and then they're like, we don't know what woke is. They created DEI. Biden literally said Kamala Harris is being chosen because she is a black woman, and then all of a sudden, Democrats for the rest after that said that's not why she was chosen, even though Biden literally said that. And then we have this cognitive dissonance as if we're not living in reality.
Biden wanted to make sure that there was that there was an opportunity for a black woman to be his vice president.
Yes, but so why did Democrats move away from that and say no, it wasn't because she was a black woman? So my point is that
it's not because she's a black woman.
But that's what they said. I can agree that it's not because she's a black woman, but that's what they said. Why did they say that then?
No, because there are plenty of black women, right? Like, he could have picked anybody, but he picked specifically her. You're positing the idea that there wasn't a black woman who would have been qualified for that position.
No,
and I don't believe that.
No, that's not what conservatives aren't saying, that there aren't, because again, and even in the Republican Party right now, and in Trump's cabinet, there are people of color that Democrats pretend don't exist, like J.D. Vance's wife, and
J.D. Vance's wife is not in the cabinet.
No, but if J.D. Vance was a Democrat, his wife would be.
And also, who pretends she doesn't exist? There's a ton of Democrats talking about that. There was a lot of media pundits too, bringing up the fact that ultimately, is this not something that is going to be difficult for a lot of the more racist wing of the right to have to reckon with, that he is in a multiracial marriage, that he has a wife who is not white? And sure enough, yes, of course there was a pushback from the far right extremes, the groypers, all those kind of people who are being like, this is not the racial purity I was promised, and all that kind of stuff. But they don't pretend that she doesn't exist. She's also not a politician.
Lauded all over everything because of her color of her skin.
Listen, I'm not here to defend the Democrats' choice on every policy, but there is one party in this country that is identitarian. There is one party that is represented and it is homogenous, and it is the Republican Party. 85% of Republicans are white. That's just the reality of it.
So does that
Some
mean
people
that?
don't necessarily have a problem with that.
But here's the thing. You said even if let's just say, okay, that's true. 80% of Republicans are white. Does that mean that they're less moral? That they can't run an effective government? What does race have to do? What does race have to do? Hold on. What does
Donald
race?
Trump didn't have to say my vice president is going to be a white male.
No.
Because they all knew it was going to be.
No, this is the premise of DEI. What does race have to do with running an effective government? What does race have to do? If let's say DEI on the micro level.
I will tell you right now.
DEI on the micro level at McDonald's.
I'll tell you. I'll tell
Am I
you,
going to
ask me a
get better
question.
nuggets?
Listen, I'll ask you a
if,
question.
If the cashier is black or white,
I will,
what
no,
does
listen,
that have to do with anything?
I'll tell you what it is. First of all, DEIA means that if you come into this agency or corporation, you're not going to be discriminated against because you don't look like everybody else, or you don't have the same like physical abilities as everybody else, or you may require handles on the bathroom or whatever it is. That's what DEIA does. But does it make a government better if there's a broad representation of the people it's supposed to govern? Without a doubt. Without a doubt.
Correct me if I'm wrong, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong. Regardless of DEI, don't we already have things in our Constitution that protects people's rights, protects people?
No.
We don't?
No.
Do we or do we not?
No, we do not. Tell me what protects people from discrimination in housing and in work and hiring or getting loans? It's all statutes. It's all statutes. And in these government agencies, there was nothing except for that order. That's why Trump just rescinded it.
I'm gonna tap out because I think someone else has a better can defend that point specifically better than me.
All right, please return to your seat.
Then like that is the point that you brought up, though. I would assume that if it's like, hey, by the way, I've got a closer for you, Mr. Cedar, if that is in fact your real name. What about the Constitution of the United States? What about that?
Hey,
How are you?
good. How you doing?
Okay, when it comes to DEI, essentially, if a person was not racist, he would hire someone regardless, right? So why would we need a policy to protect a person if we've moved past racism? So would you
Wait, when did that happen? America? When did y'all do that? That's bravo, by the way. Was that Obama when Obama was elected and then racism ended? That's pretty cool. So it's like, if someone was racist, they would use racism to not hire someone based on their race because they're a racist. But since we moved past racism, why is that necessary? Suppose, just in case, there might be one left. What if there was just one? I mean, one racist. I grant you. I mean, that does seem like a lot. But if there was one left and he didn't want to hire someone because they weren't white,
consider yourself racist?
Wait, are you suggesting we've moved past racism?
Would you consider yourself racist?
I consider myself, and sometimes I think we all practice like some form of, white supremacy. I think actually like we all do to some degree.
Well, I'm glad that you're saying that. So I guess going to the LGBT
Wow, was that a
topic, it
gotcha?
seems like it's very prevalent for you as an issue.
Well, it seems like a big issue. I mean, the Republican Party spent literally.
wait, hold on. We haven't talked about any of the things that he just brought up. I guess these are sound bites or gotchas that are already like a check mark. I got him to admit that he has racist thoughts. He's a racist. The left are racist, these people. So let's move on. So apparently you care a lot about LGBTQ plus issues.
Hundreds of millions of dollars demonizing trans people.
Well, the reason why they've done something like that, and I think you're misconstruing the narrative, they haven't demonized them. They simply want protections back for their own children because children are being stripped away from
Who's
their
their
parents.
own children? Wait,
Parents?
children are being stripped away from their parents?
Yes, due to AB 954, they've now included gender identity as a premise to remove and strip parental rights for children who maybe they are rejecting their gender ideology.
So, but you'd be okay with parents who agree with their children's doctors to provide gender-affirming care?
I do not agree with that. Do you?
I believe that parents and doctors.
This is less of a conversation and more a series of usable clips. Do you, in any way, shape, or form, ever experience what you would like to call racism? Oh, I think all of us growing up in a white supremacist society might have thoughts or beliefs that we've indoctrinated into ourselves that we're trying to unpack. I think that's a part of it. I'm glad you said that. Next, would you be okay with mutilating the genitals of a child? Yes or no? Sorry, did you want to have a conversation, or did you want me to just, again, have all these selectable clips that you can use later on?
Can make those decisions with the kids.
If
of
a
course.
child can't smoke, drink, or have sex before the age of 18, they should not be able to consent to a sex change. Now, in
Well,
terms of a
I don't know that
DEI
they can,
initiative, the reason why there's military bans on trans women and trans men is because they do not have the ability to cooperate at a mental capacity when they're constantly undergoing hormone.
I feel like this one, he's actually getting the better of Sam. I hate to say it because he's just gish galloping on topic after topic and just not actually looking to have a conversation on any single one of them, and then just wants to have, again, either a sound bite or just move on to the very next thing. Well, okay, I'm going to say anything and then blah, blah, blah. Okay, all right, now I'm going to move on to another thing, blah, blah, blah. All right, blah, blah, blah. But you're not actually going back and forth. There's no conversation being had here.
hormone treatment, as well as depression pills, as well as different mood stabilizer pills. And so when you go out to combat, do you really think you're going to bring an ice cooler pack with your, whether that be hormone, estrogen, or whatever it may be, while you're about to shoot someone of the opposing war?
Well, the executive orders that Trump gave were DEIA orders that had to do with agencies that have nothing to do with the military.
Yes, they do. Yes, they absolutely do.
The FDA, they just revoked the ability of the Air Force to teach Air Force members about the Tuskegee Airmen.
Well,
Like,
we're not-
what are we talking about here?
Okay, well,
Honestly, like, they're rewriting history.
well, that's your perspective, right? But at the end of the day, if a person
Tuskegee Airmen, we can all agree, existed, right?
Just listen to this. If you were racist, right, and you were an employer, and if you wanted to absolutely be racist and exercise that, you would.
Ooh, we're all the way back to the very start now, where it's just like, but if we're not racist anymore, then why does this need to exist?
I think DEI sort of prevents people from seeing the reality. If a person truly wanted to hire you based on your intellect, based on your skill set, they would. DEI essentially provides tax cuts for the end of the year when you create your tax returns. They give you a tax credit for hiring someone who is black or a person of color. I don't know if you knew that.
In these agencies?
In agencies and private
In government
businesses.
agencies, they don't get tax cuts for hiring people of
And the
color.
other thing I
This
wanted
is
to,
to
and I-
protect
the other
people
thing I
from
want
discrimination.
the other thing I want to kind of state here is that I've realized that a lot of the times with the liberals,
They're not
is that
having a
you guys
conversation.
push for example, for DEI and people of Latino or Hispanic descent. And a lot of the times, what you don't realize is you're actually doing more harm than good by putting them in positions where you make them believe that it's based on the color of their skin. It's based on
DEIA does not is not
it's based on merit. DEI emphasizes color, skin color,
No,
physical
it
attributes.
says that the people who work in your agency, it's about anti-discrimination
Discrimination against what?
against people who may have different cultural mores, may have different.
But that's irrelevant to a job, right? It should be based on merit. And that is the emphasis
People
here.
get hired as a merit, but if the
Not
DEI,
if you get a
if the
tax
DEIA, I'm talking about Trump's rescission of
If
these
you
orders
received a
on these
tax cut as
agencies.
an employer, wouldn't you hire a person of color?
Dude,
If you could pay them less?
listen, we're talking about government agencies that do not get tax cuts. They don't. Government agencies.
They don't.
No,
Yes,
these
they
are.
do. They absolutely do.
I'm talking about
Every
parts
private and public sector gets tax cuts when you hire a person of color.
Government agencies don't pay taxes. Government agencies operate on are funded by.
So we got there. I do appreciate the confidence, though, just to sit there and be like, they do, they absolutely do. No, that's just not the way the government works. Those agencies are the government. Do you understand? It just wouldn't make sense. Do you like? I feel like this is that entire It's Always Sunny episode where they try to invent their own economy by making up their own tokens in the same way like Chuck E. Cheese or another place might do that. And then they're like, okay, well then we're just going to hand out Patty's dollars, and then people spend the Patty's dollars right at Patty's, and then they come back to us. Totally. All right, we have all these Patty's dollars. When do we make money? In the circular economy that we've created, right. And now we hand the Patty's dollars back out to people, correct, which they will then give back to us, thereby funding the entire organization. Absolutely.
the government.
That is not true. That is not true. And you know what? I think the whole juxtapose
Yeah,
of
keeps
this
the money
entire
moving.
conversation-
What month is this?
Keeps the money moving.
This is January.
Okay, so we can agree on that. The FDA does not pay taxes. It does not get a tax cut because it doesn't pay taxes. DEIA forces them as an agency to say, if you have a job opening, you must do your best efforts to make sure that every
I like that. I
part
love
of
me a
society.
buzzword. You must do your best effort. I love that buzzword.
Okay,
Because you
pause.
feel like you have to. You're pressured
Pause.
to.
Yes.
You shouldn't be pressured to hire someone based on skin color.
No, not to hire someone on skin color, but put up notice about what.
Okay, it's just so many things to break down. I guess this is like one of the first opponents that Sam Cedar had that was basically going to be really concerned with getting a lot of sound bites out of him, but also moving from topic to topic so quickly without letting anyone actually like break any of the arguments apart. Because like most of the right-wing arguments related to like gender-affirming care, for example, it does sound on its surface to be really scary if someone tells you, hey, by the way, if you can't smoke or drink, then why should you have a right to get a sex change operation? And that's what these radical leftists are fighting for. immediately, if you don't know a lot about the topic, you should say, I don't think we should discriminate based on whether someone is cis or trans in relation to them getting healthcare. Would you agree? Do you think that you should prevent someone from getting, say, their appendix taken out if they have appendicitis based on qualifications if they are cis or trans? Do you think that they should? They should just die if they're trans, because again, that is a healthcare that they are trying to get. Okay, you don't, because most people wouldn't do that, right? They're not going to be like, no, I don't think people should be discriminated, right? In the same way that you don't think people should have limited access to healthcare if they're a man or a woman, or if they're black or white. That would be a form of discrimination. You understand? Okay, so we're on the same board on that. Yes, but I don't think that children should be getting sex change operations. You don't have to even enter that yet, right? Because, like, sure, let's break this down. Children do not get sex change operations. It's incredibly rare that anyone under the 18 ever even is told by a doctor that you're going to be able to get something like that. I mean, you would have to have gender dysphoria to such an extreme degree that they actually felt that was not only in your best interest to be able to perhaps prevent something horrifying from happening, but again, this is something that should be discussed between a person and a doctor. Once you get in already into that part of the discussion where we're like, okay, let's get through the details, at its surface, the point remains. You don't think that people should have limited access to healthcare unless, again, if you are an outright and proud bigot, because I know there is one full-blown neo-Nazi in the audience. It's that white woman who's about to start talking about the master race or whatever that preview was at the very start. Okay, fine. She might be like, oh, no, I am a bigot. Like, I do want gay people to not exist. I do want trans people to not exist. I would rather there was less black people in the world. That 100% where my beliefs lie. Okay, well, you're honest about it at least. But for the average, like, I guess, conservative who's trying to talk about this issue, like they care about it, they're way more concerned about being like, yeah, but they're trying to give kids sex change operations. What do you feel about that? They're not, though. That's the thing, right? It sounds scary, though, when you say it like that.
That the job exists. Make sure that you put it in different communities so that you have as wide an application pool as possible.
And therefore you get tax cuts.
All right, return
At
to your
the
seat.
end of the year when you file taxes, you get a tax cut for hiring someone who speaks a
Please
different
return to your
language or a
seat.
different skin color.
I don't know how to respond to that. How you doing?
So I want a little bit more clarification because I don't even know if we got it yet. On which
Not a very friendly intro. How are you doing?
part benefits corporations, like from your
Okay,
perspective?
so agencies, the U.S. government agencies, the vast majority of them, what they function to do is inhibit corporations from essentially externalizing their costs onto society.
Sure.
So the example would be, I used it before, but it's a good one. I'm making Teflon, C8, for instance, okay? And C8 is supposed to be burned instead of like deposited because it's a forever chemical. And I can go out and instead of burning it, it's too expensive to burn it, I'm gonna dump it into a river. And the EPA comes in and says, like, you can't do that, we're gonna fine you. You're not allowed to do this. But what the company is doing when they do that is they're gonna take the profits that come with lowering their costs by dumping it into the river. And those costs are then borne by everybody who lives around that river. They're gonna get cancer, they're gonna get gastrointestinal problems, whatever it is. And society bears the cost of that.
Can you connect the dots for me, though? Because it sounds like we're talking about something completely different.
No. And so the DEIA stuff is just the beginning of demoralizing these agencies and trying to wreck them from the inside. It's all part of like Russell Vought's thing.
I mean, Trump is also going after the EPA now, so.
The OMB, the whole Schedule F, where they get rid of civil servants and they demoralize people and they don't want them to be able to function.
So then would you agree if this is about demoralizing? I mean, over 75 million people voted for Trump, right? He won the popular vote. Do you not think that in part, you even said yourself that Americans don't really know what DEIA is according to your definition of it?
Well, the government's definition.
Okay, I would argue that the average American is demoralized by what they've seen, the way that the government goes about their DEI policies in the military and other organizations, not just the military.
Please return to your seat.
Okay.
Hey.
Oh, but you missed a really good connection there that he was trying to make that, again, is ridiculous. But, like, I love when people start being like, oh, I'm going to trap you. I have a great thing here. So how about this? You say you're not for this policy, and yet the majority of Americans voted for Trump. Therefore, ergo, vis-a-vis, they were for this policy. It's like, I don't think those words mean what you think it means, but sure. Let's do the Jubilee promotion and get right back to it. Question 2. Oh, I love this. I love this. Sorry, maybe the flags are blocking it. Unless you're a billionaire, religious fundamentalist, or a xenophobic nationalist, voting for Trump was a mistake. Oh my God. Taking a screenshot of that.
Okay, so let's tackle one aspect, religious fundamentalists. What benefit would religious fundamentalists get? And also, can you define what is a religious fundamentalist?
Maybe you could say more of like a Christian nationalist.
Okay.
In this instance. But things like, you know, the attacks on trans folks, the attacks on a woman's right to choose, the idea that we're going to get stuff like an enhanced RFRA, which is going to mean that if you're a pharmacist and you don't want to provide birth control, you may not have to.
Don't you think you're assuming that
if you believe that public education, we should take that money and pour it into religious schools, you're gonna get a benefit out of a Trump administration.
Yeah, but don't you think you're assuming that the vast majority of Americans who are moderates?
What do you think you're going to get out of the Trump administration?
Economic relief. That was
what kind of economic relief? They're going to cut Social Security. You're going to have to.
This was before, you know, the whole stock market crash line go down. Stonks. But things are going to get better. Eggs, apparently, you know, they have to wait for Biden inflation to disappear or something. But then eggs are going to get cheaper, I think.
Pay for your parents. They're going to cut when they go after the agencies like they're going after, right? This is outlined in Project 2025. Russ Vought, who's going to be the OMB head, he was the OMB head the first time around. He wrote all the book on this stuff.
Okay, well, you bring up Project 2025.
When you cut agencies and go after them, and you fire all the inspector generals so that they're not being able to make sure that the agencies are working, who do you think profits from that? It's corporations. They're going to go after agencies that make sure your food is not full of botulism, that your air is not full of mercury, that your water is not full of C8. This is what they're going to do. Agencies exist to curb corporations from externalizing their costs and privatizing their profits. So it may be cheaper for a company to dump their chemicals into a river than it is for them to dispose of it in a safe way. And so they get the profits from that, but the costs are borne by society. They're borne by society in the form of like people get cancer. They're borne by society in terms of like we've got to do the cleanup. That's what agencies do.
Pause. You've been voted out by the majority. Please return to your seat.
That's good.
That how that works?
Hey. That's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Okay, so I would like to touch on the religious fundamentalist aspect.
Yeah.
Are you an atheist?
I'm a Reformed Jew. I don't have a strong belief in the existence of God, but I don't think that religion in and of itself is bad.
Okay, so what's wrong with religious fundamentalists? So like when you said trans rights and women's rights or something like that?
Well, the problem I have with religious fundamentalists, and really more, I guess it's really
I'd say the same thing for all fundamentalists, just by definition. If it's like, well, yeah, I am unwavering in my beliefs, and I want to extol my own policies and virtues based on texts that were written thousands of years ago, then yes, we're going to have a most likely a problem. I think you should have the freedom to practice religion, though, and believe whatever you want to believe. Absolutely, you should. And you know, if it just brings you a sense of community and comfort, and then that's a beautiful thing. Who am I to take that away from you, right? But if you're like, hey, by the way, I want to make sure that everyone abides by my rules, and they concern a lot of private things, such as who you should be allowed to love and who you should be allowed to have sex with and what you should be allowed to do with your body and what you should be allowed to put in your body and all that kind of stuff. Because again, these books that were written a long time ago, then we definitely have a problem.
Theocrats.
Okay.
Is that they want to impose their morality that comes from their religion on the rest of us, and I don't.
But morality, from your view, is going to be a preference, right? It's not morality; it's a preference. So morality without a foundation is going to reduce you to a preference.
Well, I have a foundation for my morality.
Which is what?
It's a humanist vision of what basically creates as little suffering as possible for as many people.
Okay, so you're like a consequentialist, utilitarian.
I don't really bother myself with being a consequentialist or a utilitarian.
It's always going to reduce you to a preference.
I don't care.
If you say that killing is wrong and I say it's right, you would really have no contention with that.
Well, no, I don't base my understanding of civil society on religion. And so we have a civil society. Okay. We have laws that we have decided as a society in a democratic way. And for some people, it's okay for it to be informed by their religion. That's okay.
Okay, perfect. So if tomorrow society comes together and we say, hey, trans folks don't deserve rights, you would be okay with that?
No, I would be against it, but I mean, it would be
They would be morally right under your
not
view.
morally right. No. I'm not
Okay.
talking about morals
Okay,
here.
so here's where I'm getting to, right? Religious foundations provide an ethical framework for one to live their life off
I
of.
believe you can have an ethical framework without
and
religion.
if we take the leftist view to its logical tail end, to its extreme view, you have low reproductive birth rates, you have a reproductive dead end, so two men together can't reproduce unless they have to take from a healthy straight couple. Religion provides this foundation where you do prioritize the nuclear family.
So do you have a problem with gay people being married?
It's not that I have a problem.
This went down the weirdest, like, I was not assuming when he started out asking, are you a religious man, that it was going to end up with the whole birth rates thing. But maybe that's on me. All right, just shame on me here.
I just don't see a justification for why they ought to be gay outside of it just feels good. Can you give me another justification for it?
Well, I think.
I mean, if it feels good, do it. I feel like that's a bit of a closeted thing to say. It's like I don't have any. I don't know why people would choose to be gay. Outside of it, just feels amazing. It's like.
Maybe that's the way they were born.
Okay, what about pedophiles? Are they born that way?
They may be, yeah.
Okay, so should we let a pedophile off the hook since they were born that way?
No, I think we as a society has decided.
Should implement duties to prevent them from acting on that innate urge, correct?
Well, I think between consenting adults, it's a different thing than.
Okay,
than
so you're okay
preying
with
on
a
children.
45-year-old dad with a 19-year-old daughter as well? Incest.
No.
If they consent.
I don't know. Maybe they've been waiting a long time. I have no idea how long in Jubilee you have to wait before they allow, you know, the opponent into the room. They're like, all right, everybody, I know you've been here for about 4 to 5 hours. All of you are really, really hungry. You're just thirsting for that Sam Cedar. We got him in a cage right now. We're probing him with sticks. We're throwing old yogurt on him and stuff like that. We're getting him real ready, and we're going to release him into the room soon. Just get ready. Okay, Sam, unleashed, untethered. Here he comes. But I feel so many of these people are just so desperate to go down, like they're almost like falling over themselves and how fast they're trying to like trap them in argumentation. It's like, okay, do you think that it's okay for a person to be gay in society? Yeah, I think so. Why? I don't feel that there's any reason to be gay outside of the fact that it feels really good. Well, maybe people are born that way. Okay, are pedophiles born that way? Yeah, I believe pedophiles most likely are born that way. Okay, so you think it's okay for pedophiles to exist in society? No, I'm talking about, I think it's okay for two consenting adults to you know, engage in a relationship with each other. You're talking about completely different things. That's between an adult and a child who can't consent. Okay, but do you think that it's okay for a 45-year-old to marry a 19-year-old? That incest. Okay, hold on, wait. If you were about to ask, am I okay with child marriage? The answer would be no, and I think we should actually criminalize that. And it's unusual that is actually permissive in the majority of the United States. I think 38 U.S. states allow for child marriage. So yeah, we should look into that. It's really wrong. I think that's a huge problem. We should probably correct that. There's been over like what 300,000 you know, adults marrying children. Oftentimes it is usually an older man marrying a young 16-year-old girl. That should be illegal. That's wrong. So yeah, shame on those disgusting ass pedophiles. What does that have to do with the gays? I don't understand. This sounds like a straight thing. This is a straight people's business. They got to sort that out.
You're okay with that?
No, I think society has also determined that it's not beneficial.
Right, there's duties and obligations that we have, so religion provides those duties. Life isn't about freedom and exercising what you want.
I mean, well, you...
But see, this is cool. I think pedophiles are bad, and I don't think that they should be allowed to hurt children, and I did that without the Bible. Do you need the Bible to know that? If I take the Bible away from you, are you suddenly going to be like, oh, sorry, we have no Bible, so pedophiles are good, actually? I'm pretty sure you're not going to do that. I hope not, because otherwise it sounds like the only thing preventing pedophilia to you is the Bible, and that's not great.
Want to impose your religious doctrine
no,
on me,
because
and I don't want that.
You just admitted we need duties. We have responsibility as a society to keep us functioning, to keep us thriving. Your leftist view, the liberal view, doesn't provide anything besides it just makes me feel good. Religion does. So what's your argument?
What's my argument as to why I don't want
you have no
your
contention.
You to... Well, because the other... First of all...
You don't get to say that if you've been floundering and falling all over yourself. You can't trip and bail downstairs and then look up at everyone who just successfully walked down them and be like, none of you know how to walk. Do you need help?
I don't think that you have the right to corner what God is telling us is right or wrong. And there are differences between religions. And so my argument is, like, you're not going to keep halal or kosher, right? I mean, I don't believe that someone has a corner on religious truth. And the reason why we have a democracy is because we didn't want a king. And the kings came from the idea that their God said that they're the ones who's supposed to be king. And so we can disagree on this. I don't want to live in a country that is ruled by religious fundamentalism.
And if I do, you have no issue with that.
And no. And this is why I say, under Trump, yes, you have won.
Yes.
You have a
Only
bunch
male
of Christian,
and female. You're right.
you have a Christian
You won.
nationalist, and
So many things are happening at once. I feel like you want to unpack a lot of things, but you should probably just pick a lane and then choose to discuss it instead of just like, again, it's not even gish galloping. It's just kind of like shotgun theory where you just like fucking fire all the things you have problems with at once and just be like, yeah, that's right. Yeah, man, woman. Yeah, that's right. Being gay feels good. That's why we shouldn't do it because bad in the Bible. Yeah, that's right.
Which is necessary.
And so I concede the point that under Trump, your Christian nationalism has gained an advantage under this.
Sorry, we're going to have more kids. We're going to have less abortions. We're going to have more family. We're going to have stable family households. Sorry about better education.
People, gay people should be out.
We're not even having a discussion. Now you're just bragging. And honestly, I don't think anyone on the left has any problem with children or people having kids. In fact, it's beautiful. I'm glad that people want to have kids. I think that they should be helped. I think if you want to have kids, then you shouldn't go bankrupt giving birth. I think if you want to have kids, then you shouldn't go bankrupt trying to raise them or try to get them into daycare, schools, so that it doesn't ruin your life. I think you should have more time to spend with your kids. You should have parental leave. I think all of these can be provided for by taxing the very wealthy who have everything and don't have to think about this kind of shit. And they'll stay the very wealthy. So that would be awesome. But see, this is the opposite. You're going to get a person in power who's like, all of you need to birth, more birth. We need the birth rates up. Keep the birth. And it's like, okay, it may bankrupt you. Some of you will suffer, but a price to pay, I'm sure, for more birth.
A theocracy, and I find it problematic that it will be, but others will be happy about it.
I think it's unfair as well to label any morals that comes from religion inherently immediately theocratic. Like having a theocracy is something different than having.
I think love thy neighbor is a good precept, and I don't know that we should necessarily legislate it, but I think it's a good precept. Cool. I think there are things from religion that are good. Yeah. I interviewed Desmond Tutu years ago, who said that religion can.
Also, like this really just comes down to, should you be able to force it upon people? Like what you're asking for from the other side. Like as a leftist, am I saying that you don't have a right to be able to practice religion? Absolutely not. Practice religion however you want. I just don't think that you should be able to enact laws and dictate and govern how people should have to behave based on both your religion and forcing them to believe your religion. You can pick and choose tenets from any religion that are going to sound profoundly beautiful, of course, almost like poetry. There are Bible verses that I'm sure most people would agree with. There are concepts and ideas that most people would agree with. And I'm sure in the exact opposite direction, there are things within the Bible that people would find absolutely abhorrent. Everything from genocide to incest to direct commandments and instructions on how to hold and own human beings as property. These things are bad. We've all kind of collectively come to the understanding that, yeah, maybe slavery bad. We shouldn't do that anymore. So that part of the Bible, we could probably say shouldn't be enacted as a rule or legislation or part of the way we govern each other.
Is like a knife. It can be used to spread butter. It can be used to stab people. Sure. But that doesn't mean that I want religious doctrine to be the same as the law of the land. We have a democracy, and it was founded on trying to get out from some type of like religious oppression, which means one religion shouldn't dominate in this country. That's my sense.
Yeah, and I see that, but I think I have an issue with where you would perceive religious doctrine is derived from, right? A guy doesn't, at least in Christianity, a guy doesn't go in a room and come out and say that he has a secret message from God that everyone now has to follow. Religious doctrine is ruled over, it's reasoned over, the same way any ideology is discovered.
I'm not talking about the validity of religious doctrine. I'm talking about religious doctrine supplanting democracy and civil society.
And I'm saying that religious doctrine is democratic inherently, and in the way that you.
Well, earlier, I mean, look, we can have a debate as to whether or not women should be subservient to men. I don't think they should be, and in a democracy, I don't think it's healthy.
Right, but when you said earlier with him that someone shouldn't have I don't know the exact word, like a chokehold on what is religious truth and what isn't religious truth. That's not how religious truth itself works, and that's not how religious truth is brought to the political table to have that work either. Right?
I don't know. When Pete Hegseth is in a bar yelling, we're going to kill all Muslims.
Well, that's
but now he's in charge of the largest military in the history of the world. I think, and he is informed by his Christian nationalism. I think that's a problem.
Right. Well, but
we can disagree on that.
Yeah, we don't take.
Pause. You've been voted out by the majority.
Thanks, Sam.
Return to your seat.
I gotta be honest. So I'm assuming the way this works is that, whoever can get to the table first, they get to debate Sam, and then everyone else in the circle sits there. And once the majority of them hold up their flags, it's because they don't like this person who's speaking, and someone else should have an opportunity to try instead. And it almost seems like they don't enjoy any of the people. Like, only a few people have been able to speak in general. We've been seeing the same faces. And then at the same time, I don't feel like the rest of the conservatives even like the conservatives. Maybe it's just because there's so many different factions, right? Like, you have the full-blown neo-Nazi far right here. You have the Christian conservative over there. You have the DEI is bad because it discriminates against white people. But no one really seems happy with how the others are, I guess, performing so far.
Okay, so
yeah, this is the third time that this individual has been able to speak.
Eleazar mentioned his views on gay marriage, and I saw that you believe that essentially conservatives don't believe that gay marriage should be allowed. I want to ask everybody in this room, is there any law or legislation that Donald Trump has passed to prohibit same-sex marriage in the last 4 years? Okay. Is there anyone in here who would potentially oppose two people kissing in public that are of the same sex? You could raise your hand if you want. Yes, in public, kissing in public. No law against it, just your own opinion.
A lot of hands going
So these
up.
are all people's opinions, right? The same way you have your opinions about Christians is the same way these people are allowed.
No, I don't have a problem with Christians.
Well, you do not believe that theology should be at its
We should not have a theocracy.
correct.
I really feel this person came here with an agenda, and most likely, I'm sure, is just doing numbers on some corner of social media that I don't typically hang out in right now, where it's like, fucking conservative destroys lefty communist Sam Cedar with facts and logic. But everything has just been falling like completely flat on his face.
And so what I'm saying is, I think that Christianity, I'm a Catholic, I think that Christianity is, fundamentally very important to instill family values in myself as well as every person who wants to have children. Now let's talk about...
I'm okay with that too.
Let's talk about Order 14,166. That is an executive order that Donald Trump just...
See, by the way, like, absolutely nothing of any constructive value or merit has happened, right? It maybe if you isolate really small moments of that clip, it's going to be like some big gotcha where it's going to be like, all right, put up your hands. You see that? Everyone around here, they might disagree with you, but they have a right to do that. And that's democracy. Lefty owned.
imposed on identifying...
Meanwhile, if you actually let the play clip out, he's like, oh, I don't have a problem with that. You have a right to believe what you want to believe.
What is male and female. So I personally believe, as well as many transsexuals, friends of mine, believe that a woman is a biological female, as well as a man being a biological male. You are assigned what you are at birth. You are not assigned your gender later on. What you choose to express is something that is similar to wearing a garment, similar to what you decide to put on your face, and I don't think there should be laws or legislations dictating people or imposing laws to manipulate children, for example, to castrate their bodies at such a young age. 50% of children...
Very unusual way of framing everything. So it's like, hey, by the way, I have trans friends, and my trans friends, so I'm going to bring you up some anecdotes. So in this specific case, the trans people I know and I'm friends with, they disagree with the broad consensus of both the medical community as well as trans activists and trans people. And so I want you to understand that, Sam. And it's like, what... Are you proposing a line of argumentation? Are you trying to just lay a whole bunch of things out there? Are you trying to get as many statements and clips as you can within a short time frame because you only have minutes before you might get voted off?
How many children are treated over the past 5 years? Let's say, I think it was from 2018 to 22, there was a study that just came out from Harvard. Do you know how many children received gender-affirming care, but broken down into puberty blockers and then hormones?
Give me the numbers.
You tell me. I'm curious.
Well, I'm curious because you're bringing it up.
No, I have the numbers.
Okay, tell me.
I didn't, but
Tell
I'm
me.
curious if you know.
Tell me what the numbers
I
are.
promise to tell you after you tell me what you think
I'm
it
not
is.
I'm not gonna play that game.
Because I have a feeling
not
you
playing this
think it's...
game.
No, I am playing this game because
Why?
I think you think it's much higher. When you tell me that kids are being castrated, I know you don't really know what these numbers are. And I do know these numbers.
Okay, well, I can tell you this much.
What?
It was reported that scientifically, every single child who has received gender-affirming care, about roughly 50% of them regret it. And 50% of them...
It was reported scientifically that apparently over 50% of all the children who receive gender-affirming care regretted it. No. Globally, They collected numerous studies in different countries. So trans people in, say, North America, but trans people internationally, it seems to be the rate of regret is usually less than 1% for people who receive gender affirming care, even as children. It's, yeah, again, there's not a lot of medical procedures that we have or we have been able to both identify something specifically and then find treatments for it and then receive that kind of high rates of satisfaction. I mean, there are obviously a lot of procedures, and again, within the medical community, this kind of stuff is astonishing. It's incredibly positive. It's like this is just the wondrous, amazing, sometimes miracles of human ingenuity, research, development, and why we should be standing behind, the broad consensus of the medical community when it comes to things like, say, vaccines. Incredible invention that human beings have been able to come up with and prevent what used to be, again, a large amount of death, usually deaths of people with compromised immune systems, people who are weak, people who are unable to be able to fight off diseases, children oftentimes, right? With developing immune systems and all that kind of stuff. So rather than consistently push up against this kind of stuff, we should learn. And then it's really fucked up to sit there and be like, trust me, you don't know. I have trans friends, and as someone with trans friends, the rate of regret of children who undergo gender affirming care is more than 50%. And it's like, that's not true though. You are lying. You are lying, and your lie will get more people afraid. And if people start to believe you because, oh, this person seems to be an authority on the subject, they have trans friends, then maybe there's going to be more people who try to pass legislation against a minority of the population and deny them health care.
Are suicidal because of it. They're actually more depressed because of it.
How many of those kids? How many?
A psychologist,
how
by
many
the way.
over the course of 5 years?
Well, tell me.
You tell me.
Tell me.
Just give
I know
me
what
a
you're trying to do.
ballpark.
You're trying to put me in this chokehold of like,
No, I'm
I
not trying
gotcha
to put you in a
moment.
No, this is definitely a gotcha
No.
moment because I'm suggesting to you that you think this problem is much bigger than it
It is a huge problem.
Okay.
Medi-Cal covers inmate trans women.
I understand that, yes. And I know
medical coverage.
one person has had that surgery.
I don't understand how my taxes should go for an inmate prisoner who.
Oh, by the way, I mean, I'm not a doctor. I'm just a silly guy on the internet. So why don't we look at organizations in America that actually support gender affirming care and believe it's a valid form of healthcare and that it has positive outcomes for both children and adults who take it. American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry, the American Academy of Dermatology, the American Academy of Pediatrics, the American Academy of Physical Assistants, American Medical Association, American Nurses Association, American Association of Clinical Endocrinology, American Association of Geriatric Psychiatry, the American College Health Association, the American College of Nurses and Midwives, the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, the American College of Physicians, the American Counseling Association, the American Heart Association, the American Medical Student Association, the American Psychiatric Association, the American Psychological Association, the American Society of Plastic Surgeons, the American Society for Reproductive Medicine, the American Urology Association, the Endocrine Society, the Federation of Pediatric Organizations, the Health Professionals Advancing LGBTQ+ Equality, the Journal of American Medical Association, the National Association of Nurse Practitioners in Women's Health, the National Association of Social Workers, the Ohio Children's Hospital, the Pediatric Endocrine Society, the Journal of American Academy on Pediatrics, and the Seattle Children's Hospital, the Texas Medical Association, the Texas Pediatric Society, the United States Professional Association of Trans Health, the World Health Organization, the World Medical Association, and I guess this one doesn't count because the U.S. is no longer a part of the WHO, and the World Professional Association on Trans Health. Every major medical association in the United States agrees upon gender affirming care not only being a valid form of healthcare, but that it has positive outcomes upon trans people who want to use it. These are lies. The right has successfully convinced everybody that this is a debate. The right has successfully convinced everybody that this is something where the science is not settled. The science is still being determined. Well, yes, but you can't even talk about this without people dropping down and suddenly saying that you're a bigot if you try to bring this up. Then let's bring it up. Every major medical association, like, do you understand how profoundly weird and grotesque it would be for something, especially if it doesn't concern you, to be a cis person and then be like, you know what, the science isn't settled on this. Okay, what's the science? Oh, every major medical association actually agrees upon this. That's all of them, like 100% of them, every single one. Sorry, where are you getting your stuff from? Oh, I did my research. Yeah, this one study from Sweden in 2012 apparently shows desisting rates of like 80% or something. So I don't know. I saw it on Crowder or something like that. It's pretty fucked up.
wants to transition.
Well, I think because we got to do health care for prisoners, and you don't consider it real health care. But hold on, I don't want to get...
imposed
listen,
$2.6
it's
billion in
900 kids
2022.
over 5 years
That is a lot of
receive
children.
puberty blockers.
That is a lot of children.
900
AB
kids over 5 years.
547
Do
just
you know how
passed,
many,
including
do you know how
gender
many kids
identity,
died during
gender
COVID?
identity
All right.
to allow children
10
to be
kids a
separated from
month
their parents
die
just
from
due to not
accidental
affirming their
gun,
gender
gun deaths.
identity.
But here's the point. Listen, Trump is, how is he hurting these people? He just rescinded the ability of the Labor Bureau to investigate discrimination in workplace. Are you for trans people being discriminated in workplace?
They're never being discriminated.
Are
Hold on.
you for trans people being discriminated with
I'm
housing?
very passionate about that question. And can I answer it? Okay, so I believe that affirmative action should be...
It's not affirmative action.
Oh, then what is it?
It's anti-discrimination. It's not saying that you have to hire
hold on.
trans people.
Okay,
It's
well,
saying
hold on.
you can't fire someone when you find out they're trans.
Okay, well, hold on a minute. So when you hire someone or when you interview someone, for example, you are supposed to interview them based on their knowledge.
I'm not talking about meritocracy. I'm not talking about hiring the best of the best, the straightest, cissest, whitest man that ever lived. I'm talking about, should you have the right as a company to fire someone, as a lot of employers often do? This is a big thing. If they find out that a person is trans, or if that person finds out that they're trans and suddenly states publicly that they are trans or going to transition, should you have a right to fire them? That's a very easy thing to answer. Not, okay, so I think that if you are hiring people, it should be based on merit, skill, and talent. And the problem is that we only hire people based on the color of their skin.
Work ethic, not based on sex.
I'm not saying affirmative
not based
action.
on their sexual
Are you
orientation.
allowed to fire them if you find out they're trans?
If you need if you need to, then you should. If you need to, then you
What?
should.
What? Okay, well, I'm glad you admit it. The answer is no. You shouldn't be able to fire someone because of how they were born, because it's icky to you or weird to you. Did you apply that to, should you be able to fire someone if you find out they're Jewish? Just based on that alone. Nothing to do with their performance, nothing to do with their work, nothing to do with anything that they've done. But you find out one day that person happens to be Jewish. Should you be allowed to fire them the next day? Of course you shouldn't. That would make you a racist ass bigot. What the fuck are we doing here? I mean, if you have to.
We have a disagreement. I don't believe people should be discriminated against.
Pause.
And that's not discrimination. It's based on your knowledge, not what you sleep with, not who you sleep with. Just saying.
You know what sucks is this person probably got so many epic clips online. I guarantee it. I guarantee you there's so many ones that's like, and by the way, you shouldn't be able to do that based on who you have sex with. And then just in and of itself, you're going to be like, whoa, shit, that dude, what is he, some kind of communist from the Majority Report? Yeah, he got bodied there. That's embarrassing. Yeah, the kids are all right, I say. And it's like, okay, first off, that's not what being trans is, so I guess they don't even know what being trans is. And secondly, that's in response to them saying that you should be able to be fired for being trans. That's fucked up. You don't get to serve the person afterwards and be like, and by the way, shouldn't be based on who you're attracted to or who you have sex with. But that's not what being cis or trans is. Oh, here we go. I've seen some of these clips.
So
It's the Nazi
I actually
time.
think that this liberal world order needs to be thrown away completely, and I think Christian nationalism would be a good alternative. What we're seeing right now is
And
just
congratulations.
and thank you. And yeah, I think what we're seeing right now is a culture of death. This is the
Mormon's
most
happy.
suicidal generation ever. We have millions of children dying by abortion. People aren't even reproducing. We don't even have like a.
Should we mandate people reproduce?
No, I don't think we need to mandate. We can just stop them from killing their kids.
So you want to outlaw abortion?
Yes.
Yes. I mean, we have a fundamental disagreement on this, and my claim was that if you voted for Trump, it would be to your benefit if you want to outlaw abortion.
I think it would benefit everyone.
Yeah, I disagree. I think that that women should have the right to choose.
I think that it would benefit everyone to bring back the family unit, to stop having women just thrown into the workforce.
Maybe we shouldn't allow women to choose to divorce unless their husbands say it's okay.
I mean, I don't really believe in divorce in general, so like, sure.
All right. I mean, this I think though reinforces my point that that if you are
But it would be better for society. It would be better for
theocrat, then
everybody
you
in
would be
society.
happy.
And same with xenophobic national. Like, what's the problem with xenophobic nationalism? Don't you think that's better for Americans in general?
To be xenophobic nationalism is better.
We should have a coherent.
I don't know if that was a response, as in that fellow conservative or right-leaning person was like, "Yikes," or because I noticed the flag is up. You know, she's holding the flag up, and she's like. But it's just kind of like, oh shit, we're going from zero to Hitler here real quick, way faster.
Culture. Everyone should be a part of the same culture. We should have assimilation.
Which do you get to choose what the
Well,
culture
there's
is?
a couple conservatives who are just like, who let the Groiper in here?
We already have a dominant culture
What is the
based on
dominant
European
culture?
and Christian values and identity. That is the dominant culture.
White
It's
Christian-
rooted in European identity.
White. So your argument is that
That has been the
it's-
dominant culture.
Just to be
and
clear,
we're not letting people assimilate to that. We're saying you
Your-
should keep your culture, and this is why our culture is so divided.
your argument is that Trump is good for those who want a dominant white European culture.
I mean, that is what America is. It's rooted in European identity and Christian values. That's what it has been. Would you really disagree with that? What is it then, if that's not the identity of America?
Well, I think the identity
For
of
the
America.
majority of time, America's been a country. You don't think that's been the identity?
Well, actually, no. I think actually the identity of America has been, for better or for worse, a melting pot in that regard.
Yeah, maybe since like the 1960s. Even then, even we had this idea of a melting pot literally means assimilation too. It means
I notice a lot of the non-white people are holding up flags right now. What's it gonna take, Ishmael? Like this person who was so excited sitting right behind her, it was just like, yes, someone said it. It's just kind of like, I notice every now and then he's like, yeah, I mean, I was on board with the whole like women shouldn't vote and maybe they shouldn't have bank accounts or credit cards. You know, that was only in like 1974 that really changed. So maybe we could get. Yeah, maybe they shouldn't have a right to divorce men, so they're just stuck in potentially abuse. I was okay there, but now she's getting pretty ethnic cleansy, and I don't know.
melting. It means you're assimilating to the dominant
But,
culture. Is that not
well,
what melting
no,
means?
No, it doesn't
and
mean
now
you're
instead we're saying
assimilating
there's something
to
wrong with
the dominant
xenophobia.
culture. No. I mean, look, I got to be honest with you. Like, you and I have a fundamental disagreement. We will never see eye to eye on this. It's a choice. And people, I think what you're expressing, though, is really what the Trump movement at its heart is about. And I think that's problematic.
I disagree. I don't think Trump's anywhere close to being a Christian nationalist. That's ridiculous. Trump's basically a Democrat from 15 years ago when it comes to social
So you
issues.
don't think that he's conservative enough for you?
Oh, definitely. Nowhere close. No.
He's not xenophobic enough for you?
No, he's trying to pour a bunch of H-1Bs. Are you kidding?
Right. Oh, so you want to get them out, too? Yeah. No.
That sucks. Any libertarians or moderate conservatives or Republicans in the room who are just like, Jesus Christ, why does this always happen? You know, they're like, hey, we're going to sit you down with a whole bunch of Trump supporters. And then it's only a matter of time before one of them just goes full fucking Nazi. And then some of us just want lower taxes. All right. I wanted lower taxes and I wanted people to pay for their own fucking roads. God damn it.
No, I mean, I think you're making my argument for me.
All right.
Well,
okay.
I'm just saying he's not even in this.
My next claim is the GOP will destroy Social Security and health care. Nice to see you.
So, what if social
I don't want to tell you how to do your job, Jubilee, but what if, hear me out, you let other people speak and you didn't have a system where it was just basically whoever wanted to get to the chair first gets it, you know? What if you have already an allotted amount of time? Because you got to do this 20v1 thing because it's just so epic. So how about one person has already had, say, 5 minutes, and some people are clearly there as social media farmers. Like they have their own social media presence and they want to get as many clips as they can against this rabid communist, Sam Cedar. But we're seeing the same 4 faces.
security should go away? That's my question to you.
Because Social Security keeps...
No, this is meritocracy? True. Those who have the strongest legs and the fastest runners are going to get to the chair first, thereby are going to have the best possible arguments to be made about which is the superior race. You are correct. Yep.
2/3 of our elderly out of poverty. And not only does it keep our elderly out of poverty, it's essentially a social insurance program that protects you if at the end of your life you don't have enough money to survive.
For
And
right
so-
now, do you know that it's also the albatross around our generation's neck?
No, it isn't.
Okay, so
let me just explain this.
Well, you're
Let me
going to
explain
go
this to you.
back to lecturing me about Social
because-
Security.
Well,
we don't
that's
have.
what we're talking about. Social
Yeah,
Security.
Social Security is one of the top 3 funded.
Social Security is almost the biggest thing that our government does.
Exactly, and we are
it
more than
keeps
$30 trillion in
two-thirds
debt.
of well, first of all, Social Security cannot contribute legally to the deficit.
Because they don't even account it in the federal deficit
That's
every year.
correct,
We have
because
30
it's
years.
self-funding. When Social Security started in 1936, you have more workers than retirees because people haven't entered into retirement. By 1970, it was at 3.5 to 1. Now it's at 2.5 to 1. But productivity has increased during that time, so the amount of money paid into Social Security has been up there. The reason why we are running out of money just for the trust fund, not for Social Security, like I say, if we do nothing with Social Security now, it is statutorily unable to contribute to the debt. The math is right there. The reason why the trust fund is running out is because wealth inequality has hoarded so much money above the cap.
You don't think it's because
So
the
if you-
government does a
no,
terrible job managing their money?
no,
They have a huge
not at
spending
all.
problem, and they go, oh, look
No,
at all this money
they
we have
knew
for
this in
Social
19
Security.
The right has been so good at this. The enemy is not capitalism, the capitalists, those are job creators. The enemy is government, and if it's not government, it's those who benefit from the government. Immigrants, trans people, minorities, those on welfare, but they're the bad guys. They're all the bad guys.
That's earmarked for 60 years from now that we're just going to spend on something right now.
40 years ago, they predicted this. This is an actuarial table. Accountants sit there and look at it. This is a very easy math problem.
Accountants in the government are always right? That's totally the thing that you're saying? That they're always correct about money, right? That's why we have a $40 trillion debt problem.
The problem isn't the math with the 40 trillion debt problem. It's you have tax
It's the
cuts and you
spending
spend-
problem. I totally
Yes.
agree with you, which
Social
I would argue is
Security-
part of why Social Security's gone in the hole already.
That's simply not.
Again, you keep correlating these things, but he's explained to you very simply that it's not how it works. U.S. debt is not increased by Social Security. You, as a citizen of the United States, pay into Social Security. Then, thereby, by the time you retire, the amount of money that you put in, and it's a very, I would say, smart system. If you don't want to have we all agree that once you reach a certain age, you're probably going to have a lot more difficulty working in the workforce. And as you get older, and as your body deteriorates, your ability to do things like, say, manual labor or any other action is going to be harder. So at that point, we should probably take care of you. You're no longer going to be able to work. There should be money set aside to be able to pay you. That's going to be a lot of money that is required to pay out hundreds of millions of people. So as someone who has been in the workforce your entire life, you contribute towards Social Security. Thereby, when you retire, that system is in place to be able to pay for your retirement. So that it doesn't matter if you are lucky enough to be one of the very, very few people born into immense wealth, that there's a system where the society-wide, we are going to take care of the elderly. Because, yeah, it's not a very good marker of a civilization if we suddenly just have all these old people who are being forced into the labor market or dying or being homeless. And that, unfortunately, in a lot of ways is a problem that we have. This also helps, by the way, younger people, because for a lot of people, I don't know if you've experienced this yet or you're not entering this age, but your parents are eventually going to age into not being able to take care of themselves anymore. This is just the inevitable facts of life. They are going to deteriorate physically and mentally, and they are going to need help being taken care of. Whether or not you are going to be able to do that yourself, keep in mind, you might be raising a family already. You might have a job that you have to do full time, and you might want to enjoy life on your own, doing your own things from time to time as well. That gets more and more complicated as you have people who retire, as you have people who need to have people who take care of them full time. Do you want them to be in a retirement home? Do you want them to be in a nice retirement home? Do you want them to have someone who helps them, a nurse or something who takes care of them? Or do you want them to be in these, terrible condition, fucking, basically old people graveyards that a lot of these disgusting ass private insurance-based retirement homes are, where they are cutting corners, where they are just doping them up, where they're consistently just trying to, find out how can they maximize profit while allowing people to die, as quickly as possible. Like all of this shit is stuff that maybe you don't think about when you're younger, when you're in your teenage years or your teens, but it's a reality you start to have to face when you're in your 30s, your 40s, and certainly when you're in your 50s, that yes, your parents get old, and as they get older, will not be as physically capable and as mentally capable anymore to be able to take care of themselves. And so I think we all love our parents, unless your parents are assholes, and then you're totally justified in hating them, and fuck them, they were bad people. But if you love your parents and you want them to be taken care of, then we should have a system in place where, yes, if you are not able to afford it, if you can't spend thousands of dollars for these fucking Club Med retirement homes, that they should be taken care of as well. And again, the whole idea of destroying the system makes a lot of sense for the most rich members of society, also to convince other people that it's bad.
Not true.
Oh, okay. So we're out of money from the Social Security bucket.
No. Statutorily, by that I mean by law, Social Security pays for itself. If we do nothing, the 6.2% that your employer and your employee pays into it will pay out 78% of benefits starting in 2033.
And why is it going down? If everything's so much better, why is it only 78%?
If we raise the cap, there's a cap right now at $176,000. So for instance, if you make $100,000, you pay $6,200 into that.
A year,
A year. But if you make $4 million, do you know how much money you pay into Social Security? $6,200.
And so why should wealthy people hang on? Why should wealthy people pay a higher percentage?
No, they should pay the same percentage. 6.2 on $400,000, 6.2 on $1 million.
And why should they pay even more money at all? Because they make more.
Another problem just with the format in general, you're not talking to someone who actually wants to learn anything. You're talking to someone who's just desperately sitting there to try and, like, you know, be a contrarian, to get a gotcha, to be like, oh, so you think that this is okay? Oh, okay, so you're fine with that. Oh, so you want to make Social Security gay because you love gay. Like, it's just like, no, you're not listening. You haven't even let me finish yet, but I'm just saying this is the way it works. I think you're really mad about a thing that you don't understand. That's the problem here. And you're really upset about it. And because you're so upset about it, you're probably going to vote for a person who wants to dismantle it because you think it's an evil thing. I'm trying to explain to you what it is.
Money again, you fundamentally have this idea that because somebody you have an idea that because somebody makes more money that's fundamentally wrong, right?
No, I don't think it's fundamentally wrong. I think that they should pay more taxes into it. Now, I do think as a society we should not allow billionaires. So for instance,
they can pay more taxes generally, but why should
the highest tax rate was and the greatest expansion of our economy?
Hang on, does a billionaire get more money from Social Security if they went to go take it than I would?
No,
of course not. So why should they pay more?
I'll tell you why. Because it is a social insurance program that keeps you from being in poverty when you're a senior. And the reason why I think billionaires should pay more taxes than other people, even a higher percentage, is because it works better for society. The greatest expansion we've had in this country in terms of economics and the least amount of wealth disparity was in the 40s and 50s and 60s in this country. Do you know what the top marginal rate was?
It was high.
Do you know what
I don't know the exact number, but
if you made over $470,000 in 1955, every dollar you would make above that was taxed at 90%.
So I have a question.
90 cents on every dollar was taxed above 470. So if we had today's dollars,
which is wild, by the way. But
and it's also the greatest expansion we had of the economy.
Yeah, you can expand for a time, and then you see places. You see like Nordic countries that were like, oh, let's tax the hell out of our rich people, right? And then they go, whoops, we messed up. We can't actually live off of our terrible. We basically are able to live off our economic boom that they had between like the 40s and the 90s, and then we have to revert all of that because we made a terrible choice and we were able to have a party for 50 years until we realized we ran through all the money that capitalism got us. So let me.
That's just not right. I'm sorry. Like I'd be like, could you describe the period in which you think there was the quote party and when the party ended and what they've changed into now? I mean, I guess it wasn't an incredibly long time ago, but I think it was maybe like 7 years ago. I went to Denmark and I spoke to Danes and I spoke to them about their system. And I even spoke to conservative Danes, by the way, who are completely on board with, again, having a socially democratic country. They were telling me things that, again, would be considered perverse to Americans. Like when he went to university, his university education was completely paid for. He didn't have to pay anything out of pocket for it, so just free ride, which is good if you want more doctors and nurses and stuff, right? So there's not like a barrier for entry to get into university in terms of financial costs. They also gave him a stipend, as in while you're going to university, because it is hard to take courses and learn in an academic setting, you were also getting money to be able to pay for rent and food. Now, this is not what communism is. This is what a social democracy is. But again, these aren't things that I have in Canada, and we're considered even more socially democratic than the United States, right? The hyper-capitalism of the good old US of A. For me, going to university when I was going there was very, very cheap in terms of my tuition costs compared to what it is in the United States. To hear that people in the US, especially for Ivy Leagues, have to pay like $100,000 to $200,000 a year just for tuition, I was like, what? It was like a couple thousand here. I was like, it was not the amount that would bankrupt you by any stretch of the imagination. And I don't think you should pay anything. I think even what I had to pay is obscene. I think that you should have to just, if you want to go into university, or you want to get jobs training, or you want to even get skills training, if you want to get into trades, I think that we should have programs in place where you can just get that training for free. Because that will get more people out there who are capable of doing jobs that we need as a society. We need more nurses, way more nurses. Hey, fellas, you want to enter a workforce, one in which you will immediately be able to make a lot of money. When you go to school, you will disproportionately be surrounded by a lot of women. So you will have a lot of women who are friends. You'll be able to have a lot of interactions with women. And afterwards, there's going to be a supreme confidence about you, because you not only have a high-paying job, you're not only helping people, that's sexy as fuck as well, but also you're entering a position in which you are very, very needed. They need nurses. And trust me, nothing says confidence like someone who is well-educated, making a good salary, and also doesn't give two fucks about being perceived as feminine or gay because they happen to be a nurse. Ba-boom. I'm sorry, but on paper, you are now the alphas, the sigmas, whatever you want to call it. There's a great trajectory for you to go that doesn't involve hating women. Isn't that neat? You don't have to do the Andrew Tate shit. There's a different pathway before you that will help people, that'll get you tons of money, and also will make you appear more attractive. So go forth and become nurses. We need more male nurses.
Let me ask you real quick. So the average person, right? Right now they fundamentally look at Social Security, young people like me, and they go, I'm going to have that money sitting, waiting for me when I retire. Since your opinion is whatever works best for the average person is better, wouldn't you rather shift towards something that I would agree with, which is getting people that are 19, 20 years old into funding their own retirement rather than relying on other people to fund it for them?
You're talking like a 401k.
Sure. Well, not just a 401k, but for IRAs, any other type of retirement. Would you agree? Would we agree with that?
Social Security was set up as part of a three-legged stool where back in the day, when I was a kid, we had defined benefit pensions, where you'd know how much money you would get out. Yeah. That all shifted in the 80s to defined contribution, where you know how much you put in. The 401k started during that Reagan era. It has been a disaster, because the fact of the matter, for better or for worse, people just don't save in the way that you're talking about.
Why?
It would be nice if they could,
if the government were changing the mindset and actually.
So many reasons, but yeah, I can tell you that it's really difficult when you are in a bad financial situation to even conceive of putting money consistently away, or if you just have trouble managing money in general. That's a very difficult concept for the average person to be like, hey, by the way, so every single month you're going to get a certain amount of money from whatever you do for work, a paycheck, and in that paycheck you should break it down and break it into first expenses, put money away for your expenses so you're able to obviously afford things and pay for things. You should put money away for a variety of different stuff that you need to survive, food, expenditures like that. And then in addition to that, with what's left, if you paid rent, you paid for food, you paid for internet, you paid for your cell phone, then at that point, you should start putting away money for savings. Don't spend money on fun things yet, okay? Start putting money away for savings. Now, I understand at this point you might only have maybe $30, $40 left, if that. But if you do, put $10 into this, put $10 into that, put $10 into that. Put those into very safe, low interest savings, things that will provide you an ROI, but it's not a lot, and it's not something like, crypto that's going to potentially make you millions, but you could lose it all. We're talking, again, boring. Real investments are boring, and you do that a little bit every single paycheck, every month, and then by the time you are 65, you might have a good little amount of money put away. And it's like, granted, you never at any point have an emergency. You never at any point need money for something, say an expense, a medical expense if you're in the United States for sure. You don't have a medical expense for your animals or pets. You just, hopefully they never get sick or die. You never have a car breakdown. You never have an expensive car repair, which again can sometimes be in thousands. And you might need that car for work. You never suddenly have a relative who is in dire straits, and suddenly your mom needs a surgery to live, and all of a sudden they need a permanent caretaker, and now you can't go to your job. All of those are factors that can happen at any given time, and there is a lot of different possibilities that can, put you in a really shitty way. So maybe, just maybe, because in that scenario, if you lose your job or you lose your work or you lose your ability to keep on putting away a little bit of money every single week, we should have another system in place that prevents it, so that when you hit 65 and you're no longer able to work, or you just are no longer able to work because of a disability or something like that, that we will have something in place to take care of you. Because otherwise, security
is there regardless of what happens with the stock market.
Okay, pause. You've been voted out by the majority. Please return to your seat.
Micah.
Hey, Micah.
Good
Sam. Nice to meet you.
There's an idea that you
that you have that basically government can kind of fix all these problems, right? If you didn't save for retirement, well, then the government can just come in, swoop in, and save you from
Well, not
that.
swoop in. It starts on literally the day you get your Social Security.
Sure. It swoops in once you retire, right? Once you can.
Well, you pay
once
into
you can,
it.
Right, exactly. And so you believe this idea of basically that government is an effective organization, which it just time and time again, if you look at history, that's proven to not be true.
When you're hitting at retirement, you don't know. This is an insurance program. That's it. It's an insurance program, and it basically says you're insured against eating cat food when you're 65, and it works. It works.
No, it doesn't. You should have, well, one, you should have your own personal.
How doesn't it work?
How doesn't it work?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we've already discussed the details of how it is just completely failing as a program. Like,
well, how is it failing?
Because I'm not going to receive any Social Security
No, I've already
benefit.
told you right
now. I know. I'm not going to rehash out that debate.
Well,
Wait, what are you talking about? As in you're not going to retire, or you're just doing so good on crypto that you don't have to worry about it when you get older. Then yeah, okay, fine. I'm not going to be one of the people who actually receive Social Security. I don't plan on it. It's like, that's nice, that's wonderful. The vast majority of the population, like, I either you are working class and you hate it because you think this is the government taking from you what you should have earned and giving it to someone who didn't earn it. That's something, and not realizing that it's going back to you eventually, ideally, right? Like that you, when you retire and you put that money into Social Security, you will then get it back in the form of Social Security. This is not your money comes out of your paycheck and then it's just given to some random old person in another corner of America who didn't work properly. But that's how it feels to, I guess, a lot of these right wingers. But Sam, he didn't get a chance to say this out loud very loudly because he was being spoken over. He said prior to this program, nearly 30,000 people lived on the streets in New York. We're talking old people. We're talking old people who couldn't afford the retirements, old people who didn't, I guess, put away the money to save or got fucked over or for whatever reason are unable to work. And so this will reduce the amount of people like that. And that will be less of a burden upon everyone, from the medical systems to the policing systems to every single person who has parents that they eventually do not want to see living on the street. This is a beneficial program.
Look at the numbers. You've just been told this, and you know why you've been told it? Is because they want to raid it to give tax cuts to rich people. That's why.
So are you saying there are the Trump tax cuts were only for rich people? You're saying
no, I'm not saying they're only for rich people.
Oh, okay. Then how could
rich people benefited more from it than low-income people? And I would.
And what do you mean benefited more from that? Because we already went over the percentage numbers, and we know that's not true.
They don't need the money as much, and they don't need it.
What are you talking about? These rich people are the people that are investing in smaller businesses. These are the people that are giving other people jobs to allow them to provide for their family.
Okay, pause.
Thank you.
What's up? Hey. Good to be back.
Nice to see you.
Okay, yeah, nice to see you too. I want to zoom out a little bit.
Okay.
So obviously you're pinpointing on Social Security, and there's a reason for that.
And healthcare too.
Oh, okay. But Social Security is the program that you're very concerned about, and that.
Medicare. I'd love a Medicare for all program, but go ahead.
Yeah, so I think the reason you're focusing in on Social Security precisely is because Social Security is the most successful in a shadow of social welfare programs and government spending. That it's like the Democrats.
It's also the biggest bucket of money.
Sure, it is the biggest bucket, but the Democrats have these social programs and this deficit spending, and it just never ends. It's never enough money. So you're focusing on Social Security because it is the one successful child, but you're ignoring all the social welfare state that we've become.
Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid make up
the majority.
Over like a
right. So
70%
of our federal spending is mandatory. And you're right. It's Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, interest on debt. 8% of we're paying for that. So the Democrats run on this. Essentially, they want a welfare state. So yes, Social Security might help a lot of people, but it's like we're closer to a welfare state than we've ever been. 38% of the GDP in the U.S. is government spending. That's the highest since World War II. So us conservatives, we're trying to tell you, like, you guys are fiscally really
so are you
irresponsible.
worried about the tax cuts and what that does to the debt and deficit?
The tax cuts increased revenue.
No.
Yes.
I want to tell you about Kansas.
Okay, tell me about Kansas.
Sam Brown back in 2012 brought in Arthur Laffer. You know the Laffer curve, right? That's the argument that if you cut taxes, you're going to get more revenue.
And that's exactly what happened.
Kansas.
No, that's exactly what happened
It
to TCJ.
destroyed Kansas. By 2016, the Republican legislature raised taxes again. They destroyed their education system.
Reality is against you, my friend.
Look up Kansas.
The numbers
during
say
the Trump administration, they sent Sam Brown back. They made him the ambassador to
I think that was three fact checks in the first 30 seconds.
Because they didn't want this guy around because it was a disaster.
If you want to tax the rich, you should vote Republican because they pay more in taxes under Republican. It was the same as Reagan. It was the same as Trump.
Look at
the U.S. Look at the U.S. We have the numbers for this.
It was the perfect experiment.
Obama's best year, federal income revenue is.
I also, like, one of the reasons why this is also frustrating is that ultimately, like, he's not even responding to what Sam says here, right? He's pivoting immediately. He's like, here's a direct example. Did you, like, instead of just saying we're going to talk in nebulous terms, we're going to just talk in anecdotes, I'm going to give you a direct example. Here it is. And then immediately he's like, well, okay, you're saying Kansas, but what about Obama? Obama. That's bad too,
Trump's
right?
worst year. Do you get what I'm saying? Does more taxes necessarily equate to more revenue?
Yes.
No, that's where you're wrong. So if you look at TCJA, and I'll say the numbers again, the top 1% paid more into the system. GDP grew, wages grew 3% year over year under TCJA. So when you're saying tax the rich, like, it sounds like you're actually a Republican. You just don't know it yet.
You're confusing causation with correlation because Obama's economic recovery was way too slow, and I agree with you on that.
Way too slow.
Way too slow.
When you have tons of stimulus, what you're doing is you're creating the Great Depression for the bottom 90%. All the assets inflate. So who does that benefit? Your policies benefit the 1%. Inflation disproportionately benefits the 1%. It's an immoral tax on the poor. And that's exactly what happens when they stimulate.
Inflation was not a function of monetary stimulus.
It absolutely was. They increased the money supply by $6 trillion.
No, I understand they did that. I understand they did that. And they could pull it back on taxes with the wealthy if they wanted to. You're making an argument for higher taxation.
Okay, do you think taxing people makes the country wealthier? Is that what you think?
Does it make the country
wealthier? Do taxes
wealthier?
make us wealthy? Is that government increasing taxes? Are we now more wealthy? Do you think that the only
If
way
you
you
tax
create wealth is by
spend,
producing?
If you tax and spend, government stimulus can increase GDP, of course.
Is GDP wealth?
Is GDP wealth?
If we import 10 million immigrants and our GDP goes up, are we now wealthier?
Jesus Christ, I feel like you have so many gripes like every other person. You've got like 20 things that you want to talk about, but you can never narrowly focus on any one, because as soon as you do, Sam just like completely disproves that point. It's like, okay, wait, sorry, what do you think taxation is? Okay, how do you think the government actually brings in revenue? Well, this is because you're trying to advocate for taxation of the poor, and that's what you want. This is a disproportionate tax. And he's like, no. I mean, if anything, I think we should be increasing taxation on the rich. He's already said it previously. He's like, we used to do that. We in other periods in human history, and especially during the largest economic growth of the United States, I'm told, was when taxation of the very wealthy above $450,000 was at 90%, 90 cents of every dollar that you earned after that amount was going to be completely taxed to be used to pay for a whole bunch of different things. Roads.
If the housing costs more, if CPI goes up because there's more people.
No, I understand. And inflation is under control, and we haven't pulled that money off the table.
Right, but I'm just saying that
inflation is back down because we had a problem.
The welfare
with
state
logistics.
makes us all poorer. Yes, it does. And you can see
it doesn't.
Across history.
If you compare,
people want to come here for economic opportunity. We don't want handouts. We want opportunity. That's why, as an immigrant, that's why my family came here.
I think you want slogans. It just sounds like you're just saying endless slogans one after the other, and then like you're not actually factually correct on anything you're talking about. I mean, obviously, Sam can be pointing towards, hey, by the way, are there other systems or structures or societies that exist where there are larger social safety nets or larger government expenditures or government programs, and do they benefit the people? And the answer, like, I don't know why one person brought up Scandinavia as if it was like a test case for Scandinavia proved that if you have way high taxation and government expenditures and social safety nets, the party is eventually over. It's like, I don't think you know that you didn't really make a statement there. You just said a sentence. Again, a lot of these people are they got a bunch of buzzwords and a bunch of topics they really want to bring up and they're really mad about and gripes. But it's like, if we want to bring this down to brass tacks, absolutely, you should have robust social safety nets, and you should have robust programs that help benefit the poorest amongst you. The United States is not a good example of this. You're looking towards the failures of the United States, and you're directly pointing towards, and those failures come at the hands of government programs. And it's like, no. Government programs have, since Reagan, been eviscerated in the United States, as has unionization. We have been allowing free market neoliberalism to reign supreme within that country and really show as a beacon to the rest of the world, here's what hyper-capitalism can look like. Here's what a hyper-meritocratic, as in you just gotta fend for your fucking self and look out, and there is no social safety nets and programs. Here's what they can get you. Massive amounts of wealth inequality, hyper wealth concentration, exacerbation of people who are now homeless or becoming homeless, increasing amounts of poverty, increasing amounts of death, increasing amounts of poor medical infrastructure. Like all of the metrics across the board for the world's richest nation, the United States is abysmal. I'm sure a lot of you know that because you love sharing that HBO clip where you get like is it Jeff Bridges or Jeff Daniels? One of the Jeffs explaining it all. That's such an epic moment. It's from some TV show. I think it's from a Sorkin show. But either way, they love that clip where it's just like, oh, the United States is actually, number like 4 on infant mortality for any G7 nation. It's number 28th on this. It's number 58th on literacy. They just love the newsroom. Thank you. That clip is always shows up at some point to be like, yeah, this isn't because of the robust fucking social safety net of the welfare system. This is because y'all have been hyper capitalizing just generation after generation. These are the end results of it all.
We left the socialist paradise. It's garbage. The people that come here want economic opportunity, and you're stifling that. You're undermining capitalism and the free markets with your utopian vision.
There is no free market.
Well, there's not anymore.
No, there's
but
never
now
been a
there used to
free
be.
market. No.
That is what makes America the greatest. That's what makes us.
What is this myth? Oh, I love this website. Yeah, if you don't know what happened, it's WTF happened in 1971, and it shows you all these different charts to show you how the United States changed dramatically since the introduction of, again, the destruction of unions, the erosion of social safety nets, but more importantly, the implementation of hyper neoliberal policies under Reagan. The same thing was done under Thatcher. Brian Mulroney in Canada, like, holy fuck, globally, did neoliberalism ever fucking destroy and erode the working class and just hyper concentrate wealth into the hands of the very few? And like, it's just across the board, income gains widely shared early post-war decades, not since then. Economic growth 1917 to 2012 versus shares of domestic gross income. You can see the plummeting. Income concentration at the top has risen sharply since the 1970s. The income share of the 1% relative to the bottom of the 90%. The ratio of income inequality for families. Black income percentage versus average white income percentage. Fast progress, slow or no progress directly after. Whoop, what a magical little period of time. And I know correlation doesn't equal causation, but it's weird how in every single one of these, it's like, if we could just point to one period where everything suddenly changed, what dramatically changed in every single, it just again and again and again and again and again and again and again. And it just goes on and on and on and on and on. And the wild thing about all this too is that if you want to keep this going and keep this concentration going, you got to convince the vast majority of the population that these are not hyper-capitalist neoliberal policies. This is welfare. All this, you're looking at welfare, baby. This is the people sucking off the government teat and Social Security and getting free health care. That's what this is. And if only we didn't have those things, that's certainly what changed, but weird.
America is the greatest economy in the world because of the free market. Free market capitalism is the most ethical and moral.
America had was when we had 90% tax.
That's not true.
This honestly, I'm surprised this didn't get flagged on YouTube for porn, because the dude is just like deep throating capitalism so aggressively right now. Jesus Christ, like, take the boot out of your throats.
The numbers are against you.
1940, 1950, 1960,
the numbers
highest
have destroyed you.
So stagflation was
90%, and we
when
had
Milton Friedman predicted stagflation in the 70s with your social welfare.
We had OPEC.
When
we had
your
an
welfare
oil shock that drove inflation way up, and that was a function of OPEC. But in the 1940s, 1950s, and 1960s, highest top marginal tax rate was 90%. We had wealth inequality shrink. We had something called the Great Compression, and more people enjoyed.
World War II industrial revolution. We were producing more than every other country. It's because we were producing more than every other country. That's what creates wealth.
And we
production.
were doing that with a 90% tax rate on the wealthiest individuals.
When 90%. Reagan came in and brought it down, the top 1% paid more. Can you believe that?
No.
Do you know that federal income tax? Wait. You know federal income tax? It was when it was established.
You're talking about the Laffer curve, and I'm telling you to go look at
here's my last
Kansas.
claim. When federal income tax in 1913, when it was established, was only targeted at the people making 100,000 and over. Now we don't even know, most people don't even know that. It's just a base tax. Why? Because the projections that they had of taxing the rich didn't work out like they thought. Because it doesn't work out. There's a ton of loopholes. The rich are smart. Like, the rich people are smart. So focus on producing.
Our top marginal rate still produced an effective tax rate that is double what it is today. 50% effective tax rate.
Does not create more wealth.
Yes.
More taxes
well, I don't know what you mean by.
Yeah. I also, your argument then would not be that this is a bad idea, we shouldn't do it. It's that we should have more oversight. We're going to need more ability to be able to tax them then. If it's like, well, the rich, they're too smart for you, man. They're all super geniuses. You don't understand. They don't even pay taxes. They have this thing where they have their own corporations, and then they just expense all of their things that they want to buy and do through the corporation, their business expenses, and then ultimately they as individuals don't have to pay taxes. All right. So you're saying that we should just tax their net wealth? That we should have more of a general tax, maybe an international general tax? What if we started taxing accrued assets above a certain percentage? Are you suggesting something? No, because that's not how you generate things. You cannot generate something from nothing. You have to make things. And it's like, what is the primary industry of the United States? I'm sorry. What do you make? What is your incredibly primary industry? I understand resource-wise, you found new and exciting ways to excavate energy. So yeah, sure, you could definitely make an argument that you found out how to frack and you did stuff like that. But one of the largest industries in the United States happens to be surrounding tech. You have monopolized and found the best possible ways to monetize our social interactions with one another. Meanwhile, all the other corporations that were old school corporations that made all the original wealth in the United States, everything from fucking cotton picking under slavery up into manufacturing, have moved on to places where labor is cheaper or replaced human beings with robots because they don't have to pay them anything. It seems like in perpetuity that all these companies under this capitalist system that this guy wants to just fucking deep throat on end don't really care about the general public or America. They don't care about actually having a healthy and robust society. They care about quarterlies. They care about endless profit. They care about generating that and then doing whatever they can in an endless cycle to continue to perpetuate that. Why does this keep happening? Should it be completely unrestricted? Should we have nothing in place? Should we just let companies pollute as much as they want? Pay people nothing? Just move to a different area or cycle where child labor laws don't exist so that they can even get faster and cheaper labor? Like, where does this end?
Wealth. I mean,
wealth is very simple. It's production of goods and services. That's what wealth is. That's what creates wealth. Money. People think money is wealth. Money buys wealth.
Creates less wealth inequality, and then you have wealth that is shared by more people rather than being in the hands of a plutocracy or a plutonomy. And then you get stuff like an oligarchy.
We've seen what happens when you punish your top producers over and over again. They leave. They stop producing. The government, capital flag's a myth. No, it isn't. You cripple the economy.
I was just about to say. I was like, oh, that's one of the biggest myths that capitalists love. Of course. How many things can you dangle in front of poor people, especially poor people who are going to be advocating on your behalf? And when I say poor, I am assuming this person, even if they come from a family of millionaires, he's not a billionaire himself, right? So if you're still going to do that, you have to perpetuate a lot of myths. And these myths have to be wildly believed, because otherwise, yeah, people would start to wake up to the fact that we do have disgusting growth and wealth inequality. Like the fact that, 3 human beings, 3 men in the United States collectively own the same amount of wealth and assets as 43% of the country. That's fucked. They were at Trump's inauguration. That's extra fucked. That's just unhealthy. We have to understand that having that kind of gross wealth concentration is going to lead to a society that is going to be destructive primarily for the general population. It is not good for human beings. Well, if you were to say tax their assets or tax the corporations that make a lot of money, there's a breaking point, man. You do it too much, you actually try to hold those people accountable, you actually take some of their wealth and give it to the poorest amongst you, they're going to leave to the country where they don't do that. And that's just reality. Sorry, man. But like, it sucks. But we got to be, their servants in perpetuity.
Guess what happens next?
Wait. When did this happen in the country? When we had a 90% tax rate?
It happens in every socialist country. This is the socialist playbook. They come in and they're like, guys.
This is not a socialist country, and I'm not calling for socialism to have higher tax rates.
It is more socialist than ever before.
No,
we have more
not.
social welfare spending.
No.
GDP, I'll say it again, 38% of government spending.
America, open the schools. Open the schools.
of GDP is government spending.
I think this dude has more confidence than maybe any other person who's debated Sam, and also more fact checks have appeared on screen to correct what he's been saying out loud. I love that. It's like, in 2024, the U.S. government spending was estimated to be 38% of the gross domestic product, known as the GDP. However, welfare only accounts for 7%. Look, if you all hate government expenditures, then go after the fucking military, for the love of God. Jesus Christ, you're always going after poor people. Oh, the poor people getting their food. eating, fucking sucking my paycheck with their fucking caloric intake. It's like, you spend $1 trillion on your military. A vast amount of that money is unaccounted for. The Pentagon has failed 7 audits in a row. You spend more than the top 10 other countries in the world combined on their militaries. Why? Why does no one ever look into that? Even if you're like, well, because we have to do that, because we have to be all powerful and control the rest of the world. Okay, if you believe that, then you should still look into the fact that you're spending more than you need to, and some of that money just disappears. Where it goes, we don't know, but it just disappears.
More social welfare programs, and look at what happens. But how come we have all these programs and the black community is still living in poverty?
What programs are you talking about that are geared towards the black community? We during in 2021,
what do you mean, what programs?
we expended. Hold on, in 2021.
What do you mean? What program? How much money is enough?
I also just love how he had to throw that in there. He's like, hey, by the way, if welfare is so good, how come black people are poor? What a weird racist thing to just throw in the middle of nowhere. And you're talking about the relativity of poverty to welfare programs. Oh my God.
And 2021, you have the richest country in the world.
We offered $300.
The way you guys think is just insane to me. Like,
let me just finish this.
All right, go
in 2021, we extended the child tax credit, which is basically a payment, $300 per social welfare.
Yes, yes.
We cut child poverty in 1 year by 45%. By 45%, but because no Republican would join the Democrats, and Kristen Sinema and Joe Manchin voted against this provision in Bill Back. I'm talking 2021. From 2021 to 2022, we cut child poverty in this country by 45%. Look it up.
I feel like when I look at it,
I guarantee you, I will give you my phone number. You call me, and if I was wrong,
all right, we'll call.
I'll do it off camera. And you will see that we cut child poverty in a year by 45%.
I'll look into your claim.
All right, guys.
We'll talk after.
Which means it's a policy decision.
My next claim is
it's
Trump's policies make the rich richer and the working class poorer.
Oh, sorry. Hey, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Okay, so do you mind if I ask what policies in specific are you referencing to?
Tax cuts for the rich. I think his idea of tariffs on countries in the way that he's talking about will make people poorer. I think all of the work that they're doing in terms of attacking the government agencies will make people poorer. Because when you get agencies that are supposed to protect us from corporate interests, they will externalize their costs, those corporations, instead of actually assuming themselves. So their profits are made on the backs of all of us, whether it's our health, our protection from consumer rights, worker rights. His anti-union policies will make us poorer.
So real quick, I'm going to touch on one of the things that you said. Now, there was a lot to unpack there, but
there's a lot of policies.
We'll start at the very beginning. You talked about taxes. Let's talk about, in his first term, the Tax Cut and Jobs Act of 2017. There are a couple things in that specific policy that actually do benefit the middle class and the lower class more than the top 1%. So you mentioned taxes, right? But in that, from the IRS data that came out, the middle class and lower class got affected. I think they ended up saving like 3 to 4% on their taxes, on their tax cuts, whereas the billionaires only save 2%. So if we're talking an actual dollar amount, sure, the billionaires save more, but they also make a lot more, right? Also, the billionaires don't really care about an extra grand or two. In that specific policy, the child tax credit doubled from $1,000 per household to $2,000.
Again, I am so mentally burnt out right now having to tolerate all of this, and I can't imagine what Sam has been like. Like at this point, to still be sitting there and hearing people say things where it's just like, and it is true that they would have to actually just pay a little bit more, but at the end of the day, they make more. So I was like, okay, wait, you must understand that the first part does not invalidate the second, sir.
And everyone cares about an extra grand in their pocket, but I can guarantee you the working class stuff.
And I don't even care about like fucking, they're so stupid. I'm so smart. I'm so right. I'm just so much smarter than all these people. I care way more about what exactly is leading to this mass delusion. That what is leading to having vast swaths of the population, especially amongst the conservatives. And I know it's obviously a handful of things. It's going to be the social media companies that amplify the voices of a whole bunch of pundits who are consistently lying to them on the behalf of millionaires and billionaires. Half of the people could be true believers. They don't have to be. They have the same end result. I get that. But it's so sad to see in practice when you're sitting before people who are going to be telling you things where this is in your own interest. If that guy who was sitting across from Sam was just literally working class, he doesn't come from a rich ass family, he works and he pays into Social Security and he hates Social Security, and he sits there and he gets mad as a paycheck when he sees it, and he sees a small little percentage of it, $10 a week or whatever, went into a Social Security program. He now reviles Rather than he hates his boss, he hates the company, he hates anyone who's exploiting him, he hates that. He hates government. He hates the fact that he has to lose a little bit of his paycheck, and he sees it and he's like, fuck you. I deserve that $10. I'm giving that to some fucking, rich ass old person in Massachusetts who's taking my money, and that's where this is going. And it's like, that's not true. That's not how the system works. I'm a Canadian. I don't even have the same system as you. And I can tell you, just from listening to Sam Cedar, who explains this so easily and eloquently, how this works. This is an investment in yourself, which you want. Like, it's infuriating because he's sitting there. He's like, what if we had a system, right, where you put money into something and then you just did that a little bit every single month, and then when you retire, you'd have a whole bunch of money sitting aside. You just described how Social Security works. That you described it. It comes out of your paycheck. They put it aside. When you retire, when you're 65, you get money back so you don't go broke, so you don't live on the street, so you can pay rent or live in a retirement home or whatever it is and buy food and live. And we do this for everyone. That way, we do not have hundreds of thousands, if not millions of old people living on the streets and broke because they can't work anymore, because they get pushed out of the workforce. You describe the very system you want to destroy. Oh my God, they're good. The writer's so good at this.
How would you rebuttal that?
I would say, in terms of the taxes themselves, well, the policies that Trump wants to pursue this time are to expand those taxes for wealthy folks. And over time, what starts to happen is you have this wealth disparity, and as the wealth disparity increases, it becomes harder for working people essentially to keep up. Things become more expensive. You get inflationary pressures when you have people with more money. We have more and more billionaires than we did 4 years ago. And a large part of that was obviously COVID, but a large part of it is also money starts to accelerate. Once you, like you say, when a millionaire gets a tax cut for a couple of grand or 60 grand or $500,000 at the end of the day, they end up investing that and it ends up growing because they're not out there working for their money. Their money is just is doing all the work.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, I think we can agree with you on that when it comes to, billionaires and millionaires and there being a wealth gap in our country, right? I don't think Republicans or liberals would disagree on that, but I think where we will fundamentally disagree is
disabled
under
people,
Trump,
children
right?
as
The
well,
stats show
Social
that
Security.
take-home pay was higher for the middle class and the lower class. Inflation was down. They weren't paying as much on taxes.
Inflation was down, but wage growth was actually greater during the Biden administration.
Well, that's because due to...
It's also one of those things that Dr. Richard Wolff explains really, really well when he puts it out. He's like, we as a society, whether or not you are a capitalist, a socialist, a communist, whatever your political beliefs, I think that we can agree that people, if they're unable to be in the workforce or they shouldn't be in the workforce, children, for example, we can agree. Child labor is a bad thing. It wasn't always perceived as that way, though. Child labor used to be legal in the United States. You can have little children in coal mines, getting fucking cancer from working in the coal mines, but effectively there wasn't any legislation that was preventing this from being a thing, or working your employees literally to death, like the ability to say have labor laws or labor protections, or the ability to have your workforce just be your workforce to the bone until they literally have to fucking fall over and die. We can agree collectively that these are bad things and they're bad for society if we just allow them to perpetuate. So we put stuff in place. Also, we should agree that at a certain point you probably won't be able to work. Your labor will not be something that you can simply produce. Are you disabled? Are you not mentally competent to be able to work in that environment? Are you on a disability? Have you aged out of the ability to physically lift rocks or chip away at rocks in the mines? That's why we start to put these things into place in the first place. The reason that the right want to erode them completely is because they do not want to have a social safety net, period. That is the end goal of all this. It's the dream. What if rich people didn't have to pay anything in taxes? What if corporations didn't have to pay anything in taxes? What if these companies could exploit the people that work for them as much as they wanted to just really juice them for every fucking last cent and penny? They want to revert us to the good old days, make America great again, when children were allowed to work, and we had them in the coal mines because they could fit their little teeny hands into the slots and the holes.
COVID to not be transitory. And then one major thing happened in 2022. I think we all know what that was. That was the war in Ukraine. And I believe, and I can explain, that the war in Ukraine was explicitly caused by Joe Biden's bad foreign policy, and that shot inflation up from, there was already pretty bad inflation in early 2022 and late 2021, but it shot it up from the low kind of margins in 3 or 4% all the way to 9% in 2022 of July at the peak.
Inflation is now down around 2%, around where
in between 2.5
and 6,
yeah,
where they're looking to get it, and we have really close to record unemployment that we've had over the past 4 years. But how does this have to do with Trump's policies not making the richer richer and the rest of us poor?
Okay, so what I was just explaining with, I was going to get into oil prices. So oil prices skyrocketed in 2022 because in 2021, when Biden got into office, he shut down our Keystone pipeline, shut down all new oil and gas leases in America. Then he took the sanctions off.
We are producing right now more oil in this country than we ever have in the history of any country everywhere.
Yeah, I know.
On top of the fact that Biden is credited by oil traders, and this isn't something that I am terribly excited about.
What did he just do on the East Coast?
Apparently,
What did he just sign?
what Biden did during the past 4 years is he used the strategic oil reserve to drive down oil prices and essentially broke and it's filled back up. And he filled it back up, and he broke the negotiating power and the price setting power by oil countries across the world.
Really,
I mean, oil traders hail him for doing this, and frankly, I don't think it's that impressive. But let's talk about what Trump's policies are.
We only have a little bit of time left, but I was getting to that. So oil prices in 2021, Biden took all the sanctions off of the pipeline in Russia, and then the pipeline in Russia ran straight through Ukraine originally, and he knew that if he invaded Ukraine, Ukraine would destroy the pipeline, and his economic success would be destroyed in Russia. And then when the sanctions,
Biden or
Putin knew that would occur in Russia if the sanctions were taken off of that pipeline. And Biden took all the sanctions off of Nord Stream 2 in Russia like the second week he was in office, and then a year later, Putin invades Ukraine. Sanctions happen all over the world, and inflation rises within 6 months all the way up to 9%. Trump is going to do great things with oil and let us drill, and what that actually does for the economy.
Like I say, we are producing more oil in this country than any country in the history.
I don't think he wants facts. I don't think he wants you to tell him how the world works. I think he's got a much grander idea going on here.
Of the world.
What executive order did Biden just sign to have to do with offshore drilling in the East Coast?
He stopped it.
Yeah. Really dumb idea. We're about to begin a new.
So you want to go beyond even the record-breaking thing?
Yes.
Are you aware of climate?
And that lowers inflation.
We're going to sell this oil. We don't use the oil. We sell it. We sell it.
Getting money in the pockets of American citizens.
We sell it. Well, how is that oil getting to the pocket of American citizens?
Because when you lower the prices of oil, that lowers the prices of all
products.
No,
I understand that the inflationary.
I love how everything American is a consumer society based, though, right? Because like you could actually make an argument there where it's like, hey, by the way, yes, the U.S. is producing more oil than ever before. You should nationalize that industry, and then it would actually go directly into the pockets of every American. You could have it in the form of a check that all of you receive. I know this is a potential system. It's what Alaska does. You know, the communists of Alaska do that, where every single citizen of the state get a certain percentage of the profits that come from the oil excavation and resource excavation. It's something you could do, but it's always just like, well, no, that gets passed down into the average American because when you go to the pump, you pay less because we have so much of our own oil, so you don't have to pay as much, so you save money. That's like, so again, it's a consumer-based reward. You're saying cheaper prices.
This is effect of energy, but the fact of the matter is, they're just going to sell it.
Yeah,
they're not going to sell it.
Yeah, so
you want to produce even more oil than we are now,
yes.
And you don't think climate change is going to impact. No. You don't believe in climate change?
Well, that's a whole other discussion, but no.
Well, I mean, it's sort of the same discussion.
Yeah, no, I believe that climate change is, well, there's
obviously
an element of climate change that is partially true, but lowering or
Which part of it?
Raising raising temperatures by 1 to 2 degrees Celsius in the next 150 years isn't necessarily a detriment to society. Human beings.
You don't think so?
No, human beings are very good at innovation, and we can build seawalls, and we can create carbon
What
technology.
kind of seawall are you going to build for Miami?
Hey, you know what? I'll take this over just straight up the flat earther types who are just like, oh no, it's not real. Every single prediction that has ever been said has turned out to be false. No, actually, I would say a lot of the predictions, like in their totality, that the scientists have made in relation to climate change have been unbelievably accurate, if not a little conservative, based on what the actual results have been, and disastrous, really. But I like this, where it's like, climate change, technically parts of it are true, I'll grant you that, but human beings are very innovative, and we'll find a way around it. In some ways, in other ways, just mass death, really. I mean, there's no real way to innovate your way out of a drought, like a monstrous drought, too. Like, you could say that Trump is going to just flood the river or something, or bring the water from another point to another point, or build a massive desalination center, or whatever it is, but a desalination center requires a lot of energy and is a very energy intensive process. And unfortunately, well, what does energy do? Like,
what are you going to do about like when we don't, when we get?
I'm talking about the economy right now, which if we get back on topic.
All right, guys. Sorry, time's up. I let you
go
no problem.
longer.
That was pointless. Oh, not this dude again. See the end? Barely anyone else got to speak. There was basically like...
I choose Ben because he let me lecture him about Social Security.
3 dudes. Oh, okay, Sam picked, sorry, my bad.
My claim is that abortion is immoral and should not be legal.
Yeah, I disagree because...
I love that. So at the end, it's reversed, and then Sam gets to pick one of them, and then they get to make a claim. So you get picked, you're chosen, you're the chosen one. You get to sit down there and then just sit before Sam Seder and be like, women shouldn't have rights. Okay. Well, I mean, yeah, that's I guess the cross you want to bear. Let us have at it.
Largely because I think the primary rights that we have under a society should belong to the person, and I don't believe a fetus is a person.
Okay, okay, so that's very interesting. You don't believe the fetus is a person. When do you think that it gains personhood, in your opinion? Would you agree?
Oh, this is such an easy question. We now have fetus soul measuring. We can measure at what point the fetus has the soul transferred into them, and so once it reaches a percentage, I think 68 would be fair. So when 68% of the soul transfer is received by the fetus, at that point it could be considered person.
The human life, at least.
Yeah, I guess you could say that. I mean, yes, I think that's. I mean, largely, I think that claim is largely like. It's not relevant to the way that I think about it. I think about it in terms of personhood. I mean, I think like, life exists all around us. And
not human, I mean, human life, but not like, there's not human life in a tree, correct?
Right, correct.
Okay. So it's human life.
I could live in a tree.
It's human life.
But it's not a person?
It's not a person.
At which point does it gain personhood and gain the value of being a human?
Well, I think it becomes a person when it's born.
Why? So 5 seconds prior, it's not born yet, not person. 5 seconds after exits the birth canal, person. Is there a magical quality to the birth canal? What is that?
The person becomes separate from the host that has been that it's been growing inside.
Okay, so would you assign that to other human beings that are attached to things? Like, for instance, if I'm attached to a machine, am I a machine now? Am I part of that machine, or am I still a human life? I just need support in order to stay alive.
If you've never been born, and you're growing in, let's say, a test tube, for instance. Then yes, I would argue you're not a person yet.
Okay, so it's not really the disconnected part, it's the being born part.
Well, being born means being disconnected from your mother.
Okay, so you're specifically aligning having the quality of being birthed as what makes someone a person.
A person within the context of our society and civilization.
So just in our society, you wouldn't say that objectively that's a person. You would say that we just decide that it's a person because it's birth.
Yeah, rights we give to persons. Yeah.
Okay, so I guess that's an interesting kind of definition of what human life and specifically personhood
is. Well, no,
is.
I don't. I'm conceding that it's human life, but that you're not a person until you're born, and you do not have the same rights that we would give. Look, we have rights about cruelty to animals, for instance, right? But they're not persons within the context of our society.
I'm not saying that they are, but specifically, it seems like you're just kind of saying, oh, it's a person when it's born, but you're not actually providing any consistent reason for that. You're just saying it just is a person.
I'm saying that
I think this is one of the reasons why conservatives especially love debating what they consider to be the abortion debate, because a lot of these things are a combination of both how we are going to legislate and determine laws within society, combined with deep philosophical questions of which perhaps there is not going to be a direct answer, right? Like how do you define when something is considered to be a human? How do we determine what it is to be a human? That question alone is something that has been the central part. It's an actual complete discipline of philosophy itself. So yeah, of course we're going to be able to sit there, and two dudes, by the way, let's make no mistake, two cis men sitting across the table from each other, talking about legislating how exactly, should we dictate women's ability to have bodily autonomy and people who give birth. So it's one of those things where this doesn't impact either the people who are discussing it, but obviously we have to have a philosophical debate as to when exactly a human being starts to be valid in their existence.
On some level, there's a certain amount of arbitrariness as to when we give rights. One could say, do you say it's at conception?
Sure, yeah.
So IVF, in other words, would have to be illegal under your principle because.
I mean, I'm not sure that I would agree with IVF in that case. It really depends on the particulars in that case, but I believe.
Also, conservatives being against IVF is just the most ridiculous thing. It's like, what do you want? Do you want more children? Do you want less children? Are more kids good? More kids bad? Only if they're made organically by the penis and the vagina under the covenant of the Lord our God. So you're just a weirdo. This sounds like a fetish at this point.
Well, what do you mean the particulars?
Well, so for instance, at conception, you would still be a human life, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the fertilized egg attaches
So
to the uterine wall.
Is it human life for you or what?
It's human life, yeah.
Okay, so human life should be protected.
Yes.
Okay, so IVF.
Yeah, I would say that.
So IVF should be illegal under your rubric.
No. So they're human lives, correct?
The IVF is when the egg and the sperm in that and then they're supplanted.
Yes.
When is it human life?
As soon as it has unique human DNA, that's a human life.
Okay, so
it's a new human, correct?
Now in the IVF process, there's stuff that gets thrown out. Like,
yes.
You would consider that.
Yeah,
murder.
I'm not even defending IVF or going against it. I'm specifically saying abortion. That was my claim, right? I'm not going to argue IVF.
But isn't that abortion under your principle?
I would say if you get rid of human life after conception, I don't think that's moral. I'm not going to argue the IVF particulars because that's not what my claim was, right?
When we're talking about laws, right? Because you want to.
But it's harder, right? It's because it's really easy to visually see in your head the idea of a small child, either, a very developed fetus or something to that effect. But when you can see like little hands and like a little face and stuff, and then imagine, are you going to kill that? Are you going to murder that? You're going to murder something that looks human? Shame on you. Shame on you. That's murder. So it's easy. But if you're like, okay, well, what about a scientific process in which we're doing essentially the same thing, but on a much smaller scale, or even the idea perhaps of discarding unused cells, for example, that aren't going to be able to multiply and turn and develop eventually into a human, it starts to get a little bit less tangible. It's not as like, technically it's the same thing. I mean, if we're discarding parts of it that could have been used, eventually turned into a viable human in that scenario, then that is, I guess by your definition, this is murder. And this is why we should force women to give birth against their will. Like, we have to pass legislation that does that, right? Effectively forcing women to have to give birth. They have no choice in the matter. That's what you're doing when you do this. So that's why. It's so much easier from someone to be like, would you kill a baby? Right. So that's the start. Does conception begin at?
Yes.
Correct? Okay. When we form public policy in mind are different. For instance, I would prefer, in a perfect world, not to have abortion on demand until, up until birth, right?
Sure.
In a perfect world. However, we know in practice that when you start to restrict things, like say, only in the threat of life to the woman, let's say, that's the only way we're going to allow abortions, right? When you start to have these exceptions, they're in practice, they don't work, because when your life is in jeopardy and you come into a hospital, the doctor doesn't see a bulb that shows up above you and say, like, your life is in jeopardy. It's always a subjective assessment. And what does life in jeopardy, hold on, what does life in jeopardy mean? Does it mean a 30% chance of death? Does it mean a 50%, a 70%, or a 20%? That's why we now have women who are dying, because doctors are afraid to perform abortions on them. That's true.
Are you referencing, just because some doctors misread plain text doesn't mean that that it's when all of a sudden that life is less valuable or more valuable?
No. It means that you are subjecting the woman to more risk, and it's impossible. These exceptions are they're canards.
No, Christian.
When you oppose a law, it is not just about morality, it's in practice.
Sure,
in practice,
I understand that.
You cannot do this without sacrificing women's lives because
what about
of your
the unborn
morality.
Children, though? Because let's go back to your
unborn children.
So let's say
are not persons,
you have a 9-month.
And the mother has more rights, in my mind, than the unborn child.
Yeah, that's a claim that you can make. But so a 9-month birth child, or just 9 months and just now born, it's a newborn baby.
Depending on the state.
A 5-month could be emergency C-section and could be birthed, right? Let's say they don't do that. What's the difference between the arbitrary choice of taking that child out of the womb at 6
Why
months or
don't
5
we
months.
take all children
what I'm
out at
saying,
5
no, what I'm
months?
saying is that the personhood.
I think honestly at this point the pathway forward is we need to accelerate the ability for cis men to both gestate, host, and birth children in whatever capacity. Whether we need to build artificial wombs for them, have implanted wombs, but then at that point and only that point, I think it'll be a moment where cis men finally start to, oh shit, well, maybe I shouldn't have to be forced to do something like this. Because otherwise, like, you're going to be able to sit across the table from Charlie Kirk and then have Charlie Kirk be like, hey, by the way, every single woman who gets an abortion is committing murder. Yeah. And it's like, so would you had the ability, would you save those kids, those unborn fetuses, the unborn children? Absolutely, I would. You know, if God granted me the ability. Good news, God did. We now have birth-a-beg. We can give you, a cis man, the ability to both grow and birth a child, right? So we're going to implant it inside your body, and you're just going to have to go through this process and I mean, like, you have said that you'll do anything to save this unborn child, whether or not you want to. We're now going to force you to have to do that, and then you can decide, I guess, whether or not you like this process, you agree with it, you think that this is a fair thing to do, you think that you know, whether or not you should or should not decide to want to give birth to this baby. That's not a choice that you're going to get to make. This is not your choice, because it's the choice of the child. The child has to come before your wishes.
Just because of birth runs into a problem where it starts to say,
All right, guys.
well,
I hate to do it, but I got to do it. I'm sorry. That's time.
Okay.
I'm glad I was here. It was interesting.
I think, honestly, these things are, for the most part, flaming hot trash. Sam did, obviously, unbelievable, especially when it comes to economic issues. He just knows a lot, and that's something I think that most people think they're going to stump leftists on. Like, you don't understand the economy, stupid. This is capitalism, baby. And then he's like, yes, that doesn't mean that you should, even if you're a capitalist, hate the way the Social Security is structured or works, because I think ultimately you probably do not want there to be millions of Americans who are homeless simply because they can't work anymore because they are too old. I think but that's what you're proposing. And I think, like, a lot of this, it did come down to, all of them seem to have been fed some version of reality that is not based in reality, and they're mad about it, and they want to be mad about it. And I get it, because, like, it sucks. The echo chamber of the right has convinced them of a world that is upside down, and some things are just a matter of fact, right? Like, you can sit there in front of Sam and be like, Social Security is them taking money from your paycheck is what it is. You're right. That is true. Money comes out of your paycheck and it goes into a program. But that program is going to pay you dividends when you are over 65 and you want to receive the ability to not have to work anymore and pay for groceries or pay for rent or even pay for a medical expense, because hopefully at that point Medicaid still exists. We'll see. The United States seems to be really barreling itself down to the hyper and capitalist reality. Do not go the route of Argentina. Look what happened, okay? I know that right now Republicans are like, we should really be looking towards Javier Milei as our model. He doubled poverty. He fucking doubled poverty. That's what the end result of this hyper-capitalist meritocratic system is, all right? He got elected under the fears of consistent, economic problems happening under neoliberal policies. Yes, absolutely. But the solution to neoliberal policies isn't a far-right government that's effectively going to try and destroy and dismantle anything that the government provided. It's really, really...
Don't let this happen to you. Go to serfscoffee.com to order the only end-to-end owned indigenous coffee company that delivers blood-free, conflict-free, and cruelty-free beans right to your door. 0% of people who drink serfscoffee.com have exploded spontaneously. By ordering right now, you get 10% off plus free shipping, and it's the best way to enjoy delicious coffee while not exploding. That's serfscoffee.com, serfscoffee.com.
Thank you so much for watching, everyone. This video wouldn't be at all possible without the financial support of all the people whose names you see on the screen right now. And if you want to unlock secret bonus episodes, content that we can't post anywhere else, or get the videos early before anyone else gets to see them, please go on to patreon.com/theserfs. For as little as $1, you can help support this channel and help make more videos like this possible. Our executive producers are Anna Loves Riley, Adrian McCarthy, Bobby Lasers, Cheryl Alvarez, Comrade Junkie, Doug Caddy, Everything Important, Garrett Sandoval, Hagbard Celine, Jimmy Sombrero, Multimondi, Omni, Political Papi, Preston Kroll, Quiet 185, Richard Boehm, Riley and Anna, Roller Dragon, Cernicus, Stellar Gwyn, Sebastian Demel, Tigwick, Trav, and Words Greenwood. And also, it wouldn't be possible without all the names you see on the screen right now. Again, if you want to help produce this content, it's only made possible through the funding of our patrons. Head on down to patreon.com/theserfs. That's patreon.com/theserfs.